Chapter 839. In terms of appearance, Lin Hanhua and Gao Qing did not resemble each other much. While they stemmed from the same family a few generations back, they were of two different branches at the end of the day, as they were not pure blood relatives. Without knowing that they might be relatives beforehand, it would be very difficult to discover that they were related by blood. Still, after knowing that they were likely relatives, observing them carefully would more or less be able to see some clues. This was not a psychological effect of Yan Zhaoge and the others. Instead, it was the conclusion they had arrived at after carefully comparing the two. At Yan Zhaoge's current cultivation base, if he did not intend to, he would be able to observe down to the smallest detail. I just wonder where the crux of the conflict between the world beyond worlds and the roving jade heavens lies, Yan Zhaoge pondered. At the very least, the two sides seem to have some differences in their attitude towards Buddhism. Ahu now asked, "Young master, do we have a way to leave this obscured way world?" Yan Zhaoge said, "I already have a rough idea. Still, I do not have full confidence in it. Let's give it a try." While he had killed that group of Buddhist martial practitioners and cut off any possibility of them leaking information to the outside world, still, staying here for too long would still be risky. If there was no news of those Buddhist martial practitioners he had killed for a long time, their fellow disciples would grow suspicious sooner or later as they came to investigate. This world was the territory of Buddhism at the end of the day. Their group appearing here would be trespassing, innately instigating hatred. Through his conversation with those Buddhist disciples, Yan Zhaoge vaguely understood. The world beyond worlds and Buddhism likely had some sort of tacit agreement. Just like how descendants of the clear lineage were forbidden from entering the roving jade heavens, Taoist martial practitioners were likely forbidden from entering the lands of Buddhism as well. Also, with the lofty future Buddha and Taoist bigwigs either missing or withering away, Buddhism would probably be even more powerful than them. Due to certain reasons and agreements, Buddhism would not invade the world beyond worlds, as well as the eight extremities world, the floating gate world, and the vast ocean world. Still, if Taoist martial practitioners left the circle of protection of the world beyond worlds, they would automatically be deemed to have given up on protection, as they would immediately become targets of Buddhism, or rather, targets of illumination. While this obscured way world seemed ordinary, it was actually special. While the Tathagata Buddha had already transcended, and the legend of the journey of the West was already incomparably of ancient times, that Five Elements Mountain or Sage Buddha Peak was still a unique existence. Even if the Buddhist faction didn't care about this place, they wouldn't ignore it completely. In their words, this was a forbidden area. Since he was still unable to ascend Sage Buddha Peak with his current cultivation base, Yan Zhaoge did not remain here for long. He decided to leave first and memorize the location of this place. When the time was right, he would come back to check it out. Instead, Yan Zhaoge had to think of a way to leave this place and return to the other side of the wall, returning to the world beyond worlds. After all, this was the first time he had experienced something like climbing over the wall. Before this, he had no experience or clues to follow, so he needed to slowly ponder and summarize it. Even though his understanding of spatial changes was deeper than most people's, it would still take a lot of time and experience to figure it out from the beginning. Yan Zhaoge was not in a rush. It would still be some time before Kong Ping, Luo Ziyuan, and the others could extricate themselves from the clear scenic region in the world beyond worlds Royal Reed Sea. If there were no major accidents, the situation was still very stable. The only thing that Yan Zhaoge was rather concerned about was whether the southern Exalt Shuangshen would make any major moves. Currently, as Yan Zhaoge was walking on Buddhism's territory, he was researching on the method to return to the other side of the wall. At the same time, he was also understanding Buddhism's current situation. After leaving the obscured way world, Yen Zhaoge visited quite a few other Buddhist worlds. Time flowed unceasingly. More than half a year passed just like that. Young master, if we had known this earlier, we would have first gone to the roving jade heavens with those prime clear lineage martial practitioners. I believe that it would have been much easier to return to the world beyond worlds from the roving jade heavens then. Having left yet another Buddhist world, Ahu could not help but sigh emotionally. If we had left like that, we would have long since returned to the world beyond worlds by now, right? Yen Zhaoge smiled nonchalantly. Time is pressing. With the situation being so tense, it would naturally be best to return as soon as possible. Now that we have plenty of time, we might as well make use of this rare chance to understand more about this place. He said casually, most so-called miraculous foresight is established on the basis of information and intelligence reports, on the basis that the situation between us and the enemy is not equal. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. If we spend some time now and accumulate some experience, we might be able to use it in the future. Yen Zhaoge paused for a moment before continuing. Moreover, the roving jade heavens is a world where descendants of the prime clear lineage have passed down their legacies. It might not be a paradise in the immortal realm. Ahu scratched the back of his head. Young master, I actually feel that it is probably more comfortable there than in the world beyond worlds. You see, the world beyond worlds does not even tell the mid- and low-level martial practitioners about the existence of Buddhism. Even experts like Pavilion Lord Gu of the North Sea Sword Pavilion, Chief Gongsun of Copperman Island, and Chief Zhou of the Dim Darkness sect seem not to know about it. Only major figures like the exalts of 10 territories at the very least would know about the current affairs of Buddhism. Ahu grinned. Buddhism erases traces of Taoism in order to gather the power of faith. The world beyond worlds also does not need to do so. At the end of the day, it is everyone sweeping away the snow in front of their door, not wanting to attract trouble. Yen Zhaoge said, You are right. Still, everyone thinks differently. In the great calamity that year, Taoism fell into decline. Buddhism should definitely be involved in this. The descendants of the prime clear lineage have much to say about this, being unyielding and unyielding. Meanwhile, the world beyond worlds chose to dilute their hatred, seeking stability and recuperation. Yen Zhaoge shrugged. Still, it is undeniable that Buddhism is currently powerful. If they were to clash head-on with them like the roving jade heavens, they would naturally be at a disadvantage. Through the conversation between Fu Ting and Gao Qing, we can basically know that the current strength of the world beyond worlds should surpass that of the roving jade heavens. This is not to say that the roving jade heavens choice was unwise. Instead, everyone has their own beliefs, which they follow through with no one being right or wrong. Ahu smiled. That is so. Still, the roving jade heavens stance is more in line with my temperament. It is also more in line with my temperament. Yen Zhaoge shrugged. Still, the waters are deep here. The conflict between the world beyond worlds and the roving jade heavens likely does not lie merely in a conservative or radical manner. As Yen Zhaoge said this, he sat in the meditative position within the myriad dragon palace. Streams of dragon chi were congregated within his body, a faint medicinal fragrance even emanating from the pores of his entire body. Yen Zhaoge's true essence was currently completely retracted, not being visible on the outside. There was only the faint silhouette of a human flickering within his pupils. Numerous profound runes were inscribed on the surface of this human silhouette of light. To be continued. Chapter 840. The light faded from Yen Zhaoge's pupils as they regained their calm. He stood up from the ground once more. Yen Zhaoge's movements were very peaceful, not emanating any power at all. Still, accompanied by this movement of his, the entire myriad dragon palace shook. The vast space outside the palace seemed to shake along with it as well. While Yan Zhaoge's movements seemed ordinary, there seemed to be a feeling of returning to simplicity within. Accompanied by his will, numerous profound patterns of light instantly surfaced on the surface of his entire body. A powerful, blazing aura that caused one's heart to tremble surged from every single one of Yan Zhaoge's acupoints. The light on Yan Zhaoge's body was bright at times whilst dim at others, resembling the numerous flickering stars in the night sky. Within the myriad dragon palace, Feng Yunsheng, Ahu, and Xiao AI all halted their cultivation, clicking their tongues in wonder as they looked at Yan Zhaoge. Xiao AI propped her cheeks with her hands, her mouth agape, as she only sighed in admiration after a while. "Young master, you have clearly yet to break through space and see true divinity. Why does it feel like you have already refined an internal universe of your own?" Yan Zhaoge smiled. An illusory yet still unreal internal universe. There were peak martial arts, an oceanic amount of pills from the profound sky-purple gold furnace, as well as many treasures that he had accumulated previously. With all these factors working in tandem, Yan Zhaoge himself had successfully advanced further today. Qi and blood, fleshly body, soul, thoughts, martial true intent, all merged as one, becoming indistinguishable from one another. The third level of the martial saint realm, the late merging avatar stage. The path of cultivating the three pure Daos was much harder than other martial Daos. Still, as soon as he took a step forward, Yan Zhaoge's strength would similarly experience a massive increase. He exhaled deeply, the radiance flickering on his body instantly vanishing as that domineering, shocking aura was retracted as well. Yan Zhaoge stretched his muscles. Done. He waved his hand, the internal crystal furnace flying before him. Yan Zhaoge clapped on the internal crystal furnace, its lid opening as a streak of purple light flew out from within. A dark green bamboo cane lay quietly within the internal crystal furnace. Besides the lustrous purple light flickering on its surface, there was nothing special about it at all. Carefully appraising the bamboo cane, Yan Zhaoge smiled, closing the lid once more. He walked out of the great hall and sat on Pan Pan's head. He gazed at the chaotic space before him, recording the changes within as he unceasingly analyzed them. For Gao Qing and the others to be able to return to the roving Jade Heavens so quickly, it shouldn't be just because they were instructed by their seniors before they left the roving Jade Heavens and knew what to do in such a situation. Yan Zhaoge pondered. The roving Jade Heavens themselves should have their own unique characteristics. Gao Qing and the others are very confident that once they enter the roving Jade Heavens, it will be difficult for the Buddhists to track them. Or, if they bring them into the roving Jade Heavens and kill them, it will be difficult for the Buddhists to discover them. This should be because of the uniqueness of the roving Jade Heavens and not because of the profound sovereign or the Dragon Spring Emperor. This might be because the world itself was special, or it might be because there was some kind of treasure buried and suppressed in the roving Jade Heaven all year round. As Yan Zhaoge pondered, he analyzed the changes in the space before him, searching for a way to return to the other side of the wall. In the following days, Yan Zhaoge's life was spent between cultivation and searching for a path. Within the myriad dragon palace, Feng Yunsheng and the others were supported by numerous elixirs, miraculous medicines, resources, and treasures as they cultivated wholeheartedly. The passage of time was unknown within the mountains as another half a year quickly passed. One day, after unceasing projections, Yan Zhaoge gradually formed a plan within his heart. His eyes grew brighter and brighter as he suddenly leapt up, extending his finger and writing within the air. Pan Pan halted, the Northern Ocean clone exiting the myriad dragon palace, as well coordinating with Yan Zhaoge as they wrote one rune after another amidst the darkness of space. After a long time, when the glowing runes filled the air, surrounding Yin Zhaoge, and the others, Yin Zhaoge stopped. The dense, glowing runes revolved and converged amid space, gradually forming a massive vortex. At the bottom of the vortex, space distorted. It was no longer dark, as it instead emanated bright, indescribable radiance, which virtually illuminated the surrounding space. Yin Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. Yes, this is the first time I've used this method. It is still not perfect enough. The disturbance it has caused is rather big. There is still room for improvement. It can still be simplified further. As he muttered, Yin Zhaoge returned to the top of Pan Pan's head before lightly patting the big fella beneath him. Let's go. Pan Pan roared, his 4 claws galloping as he carried the myriad dragon palace, and Yin Zhaoge along as he shot headfirst into the infinite radiance at the bottom of that vortex. When the radiance dissipated once more, dark space reappeared before Yin Zhaoge's eyes. There seemed to be no difference from the scenes from earlier, causing one to easily suspect whether they were still stuck in the world of Buddhism. Still, Yin Zhaoge knew that he had already successfully returned to the other side of the wall, returning to where he had originally been, the world of Taoism where the world beyond worlds and the 8 extremities world were located. Having returned to this side, it would be much easier to return to the world beyond worlds. Still, the act of flipping the wall was still somewhat affected somewhat. While he had returned to this side, the space where Yin Zhaoge resided was folding and overturning unceasingly, producing various wrinkles that made it very hard for him to directly return to the southeastern Yang Heaven territory according to the signs he had left behind in the world beyond worlds. Yin Zhaoge did not panic as he drifted along with the flow, finding a wound of the sky before entering it. When he finally saw the green sky of the world beyond worlds after traversing the wound of the sky, he felt rather gratified, feeling the flow of time in the world beyond worlds and comparing it to the flow of time when he had been drifting through space earlier. Yin Zhaoge nodded satisfactorily. It is not much different from what I had calculated earlier. Still having a lot of time, Yin Zhaoge began investigating where he had ended up this time. Yin Zhaoge quickly found a place with people in the vicinity, going over to ask about it. The world beyond worlds was really too big. While it had a common language, there were also many different accents and dialects due to the differences in geography. Yin Zhaoge spent some time to ascertain where he was currently. It was where the northeastern Sky Heaven territory intersected with the eastern Vast Heaven territory. There was still quite a distance to travel from the southeastern Blazing Heaven territory, as he would have to head south and traverse the entire eastern Vast Heaven territory. Yin Zhaoge was not concerned about this, as he directly set off. Still, just as he was about to move, his footsteps slowed. Yin Zhaoge's gaze involuntarily fell on a person in the distance. It was a skinny young man who was handsome to the extreme and had an outstanding demeanor, as he was an unforgettable sight to onlookers. While he did not intentionally reveal it, he did not intentionally conceal it either. His cultivation base was rather outstanding, as he was already at the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm, the late merging avatar stage. From Yin Zhaoge's discernment ability, this person should only be a step away from the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm. Still, this was not the reason why Yin Zhaoge halted. What he was concerned about was that besides the difference in gender, this man's appearance was completely the same as Sikong Qing's. Another Sikong Qing. To be continued. Chapter 841. Yin Zhaoge had encountered a similar situation in the 8 extremities world that year. It was a man called Ouyang Qi, who looked just like Sikong Qing disguised as a man. Still, it was indeed an actual man. With this precedent, Yin Zhaoge knew that it was not just limited to females like Sikong Qing, as there was a possibility of meeting males as well. Yin Zhaoge appraised the other party. This person should be similar in age to Yu Baoqi of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory's Royal Reed Sea's North Sea Sword Pavilion. Their cultivation and strength were higher, most likely because they came from different sections. Yan Zhaoge's gaze fell on this person's clothes. He was garbed in green clothes with the pattern of an ancient tree on his sleeves, which had 9 branches. It would have been fine if Yan Zhaoge had not seen it. As he gazed at this pattern, that ancient tree of 9 branches instantly seemed to turn real as its green leaves swayed amidst the wind. That person, however, paid no heed to this because Yan Zhaoge was not the only one paying attention to this pattern. Everyone in the surroundings, whether intentionally or not, inevitably paused as their gazes swept past this pattern. This was because in the eastern vast heaven territory, this symbol signified a person's identity. Personal disciple of the Eastern Exalts Tao Arena, remote cloud mountains clear light locale. In the vast territory of the Eastern vast heaven territory, people dressed like this could do whatever they wanted most of the time. The patterns on his sleeves were special as they integrated the essence, chi, and spirit of the clear light locale disciple, as well as the martial true intent that the Eastern Exalt had personally imparted to them. Outsiders would be hard-pressed to imitate it. Even if they managed to seize it, it would be very difficult for them to wear it. It was not just the identity of the clear light locale disciple. Everyone's attire was different as well. While this attire was not a sacred artifact or a spirit artifact, it similarly possessed powerful defensive power as it was a rare treasure. This was a secret art unique to remote cloud mountains clear light locale. Everyone in the eastern vast heaven territory would recognize it. It was no wonder that the personal disciple of the Eastern Exalt had suddenly appeared before them. Yan Zhaoge had never been to the eastern vast heaven territory before. Still, when he had chatted with Mu Jun and Chen Zhiliang at the southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Golden Court Mountain previously, he had memorized many unique local customs and practices of the world beyond worlds. While Yan Zhaoge did not fully understand the special traditions of clear light locale in the southeastern vast heaven territory, he had still heard of them before. As soon as he saw that man's attire, he had a rough idea. A personal disciple of the Eastern Exalt. The Eastern Exalt was the hegemon of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, a figure similar to the Southeastern Exalt Chaojia and the Southern Exalt Zhuangshen. Thinking of this existence, a scene involuntarily surfaced within Yan Zhaoge's mind. Several azure pillars of qi suddenly appeared, and then converged to form a huge divine tree. This divine tree seemed to pierce through the universe as the aura and power that emanated from it far surpassed that of late immortal bridge martial saints. Back in the dim, radiant mausoleum, the Western Exalt and the Eastern Exalt had both made a move as well. It was just that they had been obstructed by the restrictions of the dim, radiant mausoleum in the end, losing track of the mausoleum as they had not been able to enter it in the end. While it had only been for a brief moment, the Eastern Exalt's actions had still left some impression on Yan Zhaoge. The profundity of the martial arts he cultivated and the abundance of resources his disciples could obtain were naturally far beyond what the North Sea Sword Pavilion could compare to. It was not surprising that this person's cultivation was higher than Yu Baoqi's, whose talent was similar to hers. The young man who bore a striking resemblance to Si Kongqing didn't pay too much attention to the onlookers as he left the city on his own. Yan Zhaoge's interest was piqued as he secretly followed after him. "Young master, are we going to ambush him and kidnap him?" Who had an excited expression on his face. Yan Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. "If we can communicate, it would definitely be better to do so normally." Feng Yunsheng could not help but laugh. "You mean that if we cannot communicate, we are going to ambush him and kidnap him?" Yan Zhaoge said, "That will depend on the situation. He is a personal disciple of clear light locale at the end of the day, and this is also the territory of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory. We still don't know if he has fellow disciples in the vicinity. If we really want to make a move, we will first have to familiarize ourselves with the environment and understand the surrounding situation. Xiao AI was rendered speechless. Young master is young master indeed. Others would think about how to befriend disciples of clear light locale in the presence of the eastern vast heaven territory. Young master, you would actually want to kidnap him. Yen Zhaoge shrugged. The wound of the sky that leads to the eight extremities world is in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. There is nothing wrong with befriending Golden Court Mountain, giving yourself a stable base of support. Now that we have a base of support, we will be able to move more flexibly elsewhere. Now, Yen Zhaoge laughed lightly. Moreover, kidnapping him is just the worst-case scenario. Who knows, we might even hit it off at first sight. Don't make it sound like I have already made up my mind to kidnap him. While they were both third-level martial saints, the late merging avatar stage, still, whether it was Yen Zhaoge or the Northern Ocean clone, it would be very hard for the other party to detect them as they followed behind him. This youth headed north, entering the depths of a mountain range. This mountain range was where the northeastern Sky Heaven territory and the eastern Vast Heaven territory intersected. Yen Zhaoge followed for a while longer, his footsteps gradually slowing as he vaguely sensed that there was more than just a single expert up ahead. While he did not fear them, if he continued getting closer, he might be discovered by them. The auras of those people were similar to this youth he was following. They were likely disciples of the Eastern Exalt, descendants of remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale. This youth, who resembled Sikong Qing, seemed to have hurried over here to meet up with his fellow disciples. After joining forces, they set off once more, continuing deeper into the mountain range. Yen Zhaoge adjusted the distance between them slightly before continuing to follow them. After traveling for half a day, the other party's speed was not fast, as they did not travel in a straight line. From the looks of it, they seemed to be searching for something, while Yen Zhaoge was curious as well. Comparatively speaking, he was more interested in the mysteries of that martial saint youth himself. Just as Yen Zhaoge was about to directly reveal himself and attempt to interact with them, he felt that they had clearly slowed down. A moment later, Yen Zhaoge sensed signs of a dimensional passageway opening up in the distant mountains. These disciples of the Eastern Exalt seemed to have opened up a dimensional passageway that led to some foreign dimension. Yen Zhaoge curled his lips. Some secret dimension? It looks like these clear light locale disciples are here to seek treasures. He followed them, preparing to reveal himself and interact with them. As he neared, he discovered that this place was unusual. The power of dimensions was chaotic as streams of cold wind howled, blowing out from the entrance of the dimensional passageway. Affected by this, the sensory abilities of martial practitioners would plummet greatly, as they would only be able to rely on their five senses, such as sight and hearing, to observe their movements. As a result, the clear light locale martial practitioners guarding the entrance did not immediately see Yen Zhaoge, as they instead chatted amongst themselves. That snow crane has vanished without a trace for a few years already. Now that traces of her have finally appeared, I hope that we can stop her this time. As the other party's voice entered Yen Zhaoge's ears, his pupils abruptly dilated as he instantly halted in his tracks. To be continued. Chapter 842. Yen Zhaoge had originally been prepared to directly appear and greet the other party. Still, upon hearing the words snow crane, he instantly halted. I should not have heard wrongly, right? Yen Zhaoge was expressionless. They mentioned the word snow crane just now, right? While this title, or code name, could also refer to someone else. Still, for Yen Zhaoge, who had always been paying attention to news of his mother, upon hearing these two words, the first thing that came to his mind was naturally Shui Chuqing. The characteristics that the other party had mentioned were also similar to Shui Chuqing's. Yen Zhaoge could not help but pay attention to this. His gaze hardened slightly as he circulated the peerless heavenly scripture, retracting his aura before striding forward, once more secretly approaching the other party. There were a total of 3 people guarding the entrance of the dimensional passageway. One of them was a mid-scene divinity martial saint, leading the way. Apart from that, there were 2 late merging avatar martial saints. One of them was precisely that youth whose features resembled Sikong Qing's. The 3 of them were clearly in charge of guarding this door, acting as reinforcements while also preventing the target within from escaping. The other clear light locale, disciples passed through the dimensional passageway, heading to the other side. That 5th level martial saint looked like a middle-aged man, with a white face and a slight beard, his figure slightly chubby. He was currently saying, "Someone in the vicinity has personally seen her. This foreign dimension should be where she is currently residing." Opposite the middle-aged man, a long-faced youth snorted, "We will definitely be able to stop her this time. I don't believe that she will be able to escape this time. Am I right, Senior Apprentice Brother Lao?" The expression of that white-faced middle-aged man, Senior Apprentice Brother Lao, was not relaxed. "Let's hope so. That snow crane is a descendant of the earlier divine divination technique, of the river diagram and Luo inscriptions. Also, her attainments in this art are extraordinarily high. Even when she was still a martial grandmaster or even a martial scholar, she was already rather miraculous. In recent years, she has even neared the level of being able to foresee and avoid danger. Otherwise, she would not have been unable to be stopped after so many years." Senior Apprentice Brother Lao said earnestly, "Still, there is great hope this time. As soon as we received the news, we rushed over, also bringing along a treasure that can conceal the mysteries of the heavens." The horse-faced man sighed. If Master had personally taken action, it would have been a piece of cake. Senior Apprentice Brother Lao shook his head. Master also has his misgivings and people to be on guard against. For example, our neighbor to the north. The place this time just happens to be at the border between our eastern vast heaven territory and northeastern sky heaven territory. What I'm most worried about is that something unexpected might happen. The youth who bore a striking resemblance to Sikong Qing asked, "Senior Brother Lao, why exactly are we pursuing this woman called Snow Crane?" Senior Marshal Brother Lao said indifferently, "Junior Marshal Brother Li Cheng, we will do our best to carry out Master's orders." Li Cheng nodded. "I understand. I'm just curious." Senior Marshal Brother Lao said, "She stole a precious treasure. We need to arrest her and recover the stolen item." As he spoke, his expression suddenly changed, and he turned his head to look to the side. At the same time, a voice sounded, "I wonder what precious item it is." Yen Zhaoge's sudden appearance in front of the 3 caused them to feel a chill within their hearts. Senior Marshal Brother Lao frowned and asked, "Who are you?" Seeing that Yen Zhaoge had come with ill intentions, clear qi had already begun surging about his body. However, Yen Zhaoge arrived as he strode forward after saying those words, arriving before them in an instant. It was not just Yen Zhaoge himself. The Northern Ocean clone had also appeared, resembling a streak of light. It was unknown whether the other side had reinforcements or what the situation was like on the other side of the dimensional passageway. Yen Zhaoge wanted to interrogate them. Not wasting any time, he attacked with all his might, ending the battle as quickly as possible. Very quickly, the 3 opponents were all subdued. Yen Zhaoge gazed at the entrance of the dimensional passageway. Before him, that horse-faced youth asked unresignedly, "Do you know what you are doing?" Senior Marshal Brother Lao said sternly, "Who are you? We should not have met before. Did you have a grudge with my cloud, Mist Mountain's clear light locale? There is no need to introduce yourself. While I do not roam the eastern vast heaven territory, I still recognize your sex insignia," Yen Zhaoga said nonchalantly. "As for what I am doing, it is not important. I am more concerned about what you are doing." Li Cheng's gaze also fell on the entrance of the dimensional passageway before he turned to look at Yen Zhaoga. "You have come for the snow crane as well? Are you an old acquaintance of hers, or have you come to capture her as well?" Senior Marshal Brother Lao carefully gazed at Yen Zhaoga's face, his expression suddenly changing greatly. Yen Zhaoga said casually, "You have too many questions." Saying thus, Yen Zhaoga directly detained the three of them before directly entering the dimensional passageway together with the Northern Ocean clone. Traversing the spatial passageway, the chaotic flows of space intersected before them as it was a world of many colors. After a while, the scenery before them returned to normal as it suddenly opened up. What appeared before Yen Zhaoga's eyes was a world with beautiful scenery. The environment of this foreign dimension was rather good. "This mother of mine is really like Father and Xiao," AI said, being rather particular about the quality of life. "Ah," Yen Zhaoga thought as he felt the flow of spiritual qi within this foreign dimension, searching for his target. Still, before he could get a clear grasp of the situation, a powerful light suddenly lit up in the distant horizon. A thick pillar of light shot into the skies before the terrifying light of thunder began expanding into the surroundings, looking like it wanted to envelop the entire foreign dimension. However, before it could even approach Yen Zhaoga, a few streaks of thunder also arose there as the two sides clashed intensely. Yen Zhaoga frowned, hastening forward. Now, however, he suddenly discovered that there seemed to be something wrong with Li Cheng, whom he had just captured. The youth who had originally been attempting to struggle free of the cage was suddenly dazed for a moment. When he regained his wits, a pained look appeared on his face, confusion intermingling within his gaze. While he was worried about the situation in the distance, Yen Zhaoga was still taken aback as he discovered this situation. A rune had clearly surfaced on Li Cheng's forehead on its own. This rune was precisely that of Sikong Qing and others who were similar to her, male or female, each of them having one. While they were connected to each other, they were all different runes. Yen Zhaoga had already seen Li Cheng's rune before, but that had been the result of him concentrating on observing it with his cultivation base. Now, however, this rune had surfaced on its own as everyone could clearly see it. Yen Zhaoga had never seen Sikong Qing and the others in such a situation before. And looking at Li Cheng's current appearance and expression, this was clearly not something that he had done voluntarily, instead being a passive reaction to some external stimulus. What had caused this? Have you ever experienced a similar situation before? Yen Zhaoga asked anxiously. Li Cheng let out a pained groan. "No." Yen Zhaoga abruptly raised his head, gazing into the distance. The few streaks of thunder in the periphery most likely originated from disciples of Clear Light Locale. However, since this was the first time something like this had happened to Li Cheng, it should have nothing to do with those of his lineage, whom he often met. What had caused Li Cheng's current change was likely that majestic pillar of light that shot into the sky at their center. And that pillar of light was very likely the handiwork of his mother, Xue Chuqing. To be continued. Chapter 843. His mother, Xue Chuqing, was related to Sikong Qing. And these people who were similar to Sikong Qing? Yen Zhaoga suddenly recalled that when he had first met Sikong Qing that year, the two of them had still only been living and growing up in the Eight Extremities world. None of them had ever been to another world with a different flow of time. At that time, everyone's age could be calculated according to the time of the Eight Extremities world. At that time, he was about 4 or 5 years older than Sikong Qing. According to the time of the Eight Extremities world, around a year or so before Sikong Qing had been born during Yen Zhaoga's childhood, Xue Chuqing had disappeared and left. It's not a coincidence. Yan Zhaoge muttered to himself. Of course, Xue Chuqing and Si Kongqing were not related by blood. However, Si Kongqing's abnormality was very likely related to Xue Chuqing. Because time flowed differently in the various worlds, including the world beyond worlds, Si Kongqing, Yu Baoqi, Li Cheng, and the others were of different ages now. However, if the time of the various worlds was converted to the time of the Eight Extremities world, the ages of these people would virtually be exactly the same. Yan Zhaoge did not cease in his footsteps as he sped towards the place where the light of thunder had collided. In the distance, the enormous pillar of bluish-purple lightning was pressing against the several enormous balls of azure lightning around it. Numerous terrifying lightning snakes darted through the void, almost turning the entire foreign dimension into a sea of lightning. The pillar of bluish-violet lightning finally weakened and shrank towards the center. Yan Zhaoge's gaze flickered. It seems to be some sort of formation. A few giant green balls of lightning formed a barrier that locked the bluish-purple pillar of light in the middle. When the bluish-purple pillar of light was gradually worn down, the green balls of lightning began to shrink. As Yan Zhaoge neared, he could see that within each green ball of thunder was a green-clothed martial practitioner. On the sleeves of these green-clothed martial artists, there was an ancient tree with 9 branches. It was precisely the mark of a personal disciple of the Eastern Exalt's lineage in the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory's remote Cloud Mountains clear light locale. As for the bluish-purple lightning pillar, its scale had shrunk, and its power was gradually exhausted. Only arcs of lightning were left in the air. The ground below had already been destroyed by the lightning, and its original landform could no longer be seen. Only a huge formation pattern remained, flashing with purple light. However, it was also gradually dissipating. The surroundings were filled with berserk lightning essence energy, forming a terrifying magnetic force that enveloped heaven and earth. It greatly affected one's perception. Yan Zhaoge exerted his eyesight to the fullest, scanning his surroundings. He did not discover anyone concealed in the vicinity, nor did he discover any place where someone could hide. The lightning essence contained the aura of death. This meant that someone had died in the thunderstorm just now. It can't be that Mother would rather die than be captured and choose to perish together with us, right? The corners of Yan Zhaoge's mouth twitched. I'm more willing to believe that she had already fled, leaving behind a trap here for those who came to capture her. Sure enough, someone shouted angrily. She still got away. You've already prepared a treasure that can conceal the heavenly secrets. How could you know that we're coming? Could it be a spy? Gazing over carefully, Yan Zhaoge saw that there were a total of 4 people here. One was a late-seeing divinity martial saint, one was a 5th-level martial saint, and 2 were 4th-level martial saints. Aside from them, the other clear light locale disciples who had come to capture Yan Zhaoge had clearly all perished due to the thunderstorm trap earlier. If not for the fact that these 4 people had reacted in time and possessed great strength, they would probably have suffered greatly as well. Even though they had already made the correct response within the shortest amount of time, they had still been hard-pressed to protect their fellow disciples whose cultivation bases were slightly lower. The group of clear light locale martial practitioners was flustered and exasperated. Now, sensing someone suddenly approaching from behind, they hurriedly turned over. Seeing Yan Zhaoge, they were all taken aback. Who are you? Looking at Yan Zhaoge, their expressions gradually changed. One of them was shocked and doubtful as he sent a sound transmission to the other 3. Look at his appearance. Does he resemble that snow crane somewhat? If not for having seen Yan Zhaoge in this unique place and not having tried to connect the 2, they would not have been able to detect anything wrong with him just by looking at him. Yet, suddenly seeing Yan Zhaoge at this time and place, the clear light locale martial practitioners instantly felt that something was wrong. He is at least 40 to 50% similar. Could he be a friend of that snow crane? Considering the age, her son, their gazes all sunk at this moment. That late seeing divinity martial saint stared fixedly at Yen Zhaoge. Who exactly are you? Why have you appeared here? Yen Zhaoge was still appraising the surroundings, checking for any details that he had overlooked. After a while, having scanned the area a few times and still not discovered anything new, Yen Zhaoge instead heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like his mother had indeed already left, successfully evading those who were pursuing her once more, as she had even left behind a huge gift for them. Still, Yen Zhaoge could not help but sigh at this, as she had evaded them as well. Still, these pursuers before him might be able to tell him more about his mother. I am surnamed Yen Zhaoge. He regained his wits, smiling as he looked at them. Hearing Yen Zhaoge's name, that late-seeing divinity martial saint and an early-seeing divinity martial saint both raised their brows slightly. You are Yen Zhaoge? Now that Yen Zhaoge's fame had risen in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, he was no longer a nameless figure in the neighboring eastern vast heaven territory. As the ruler of the eastern vast heaven territory, remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale had also paid attention to the rising stars and young geniuses who had recently emerged in their neighboring territories. While they had never seen Yen Zhaoge's appearance before, the two clear light locale disciples had clearly heard of his name before. Still, this only caused their gazes to turn even colder, to think that you are actually related to that snow crane. This is truly unexpected. Yen Zhaoge did not deny it. So what? That late-seeing divinity martial saint exhaled slowly, saying in a heavy tone, all along, that snow crane has seemed to have no relations at all, having little contact with the outside world as well. It has been hard for us to find her whereabouts, with just the slightest hint of a clue by the time we have caught up to her. It would be like now, her fleeing first. As he spoke, he strode through space towards Yen Zhaoge. Now, it is different. We finally have a way to deal with her. There is no need for us to constantly chase after her, instead having hope of waiting for her to come knocking on our door of her own accord. Yen Zhaoge smiled, pointing at his own nose. You want to use me as bait? A cold light flickered within the middle-aged man's gaze. She has laid down traps a few times, killing and injuring many of my fellow disciples. Even if we cannot bait her in, taking you down will at least be able to pay with their lives for the deaths of my fellow disciples. Saying thus, he directly pointed towards Yen Zhaoge with a finger. A speck of green light flickered on his fingertip before instantly transforming into a green clump of thunder that was even larger than a mountain peak. To be continued. Chapter 844. The martial art of the Eastern Exalt's lineage at remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale was known as the longevity martial scripture. It was one of the four imperials of Taoism, a branch of the southern extremity longevity emperor's lineage. Those who cultivated the longevity manual could prolong their lifespan. Their life force was hidden and endless, and their aura was ancient. Quintessential astral chi could give birth to an endless amount of life energy. Plants flourished on Misty Cloud Mountain. A great number of rare spirit flowers and spirit medicines could be seen everywhere, as it was renowned throughout the entire world beyond worlds. The Eastern Exalt and the Southeastern Exalt, peak experts who lived next to each other, were both renowned beneath the heavens for their alchemy. The difference was that while the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie's attainments in the Tao of alchemy were outstanding, this was his personal talent, as there were not many disciples of his lineage who could inherit his legacy in this area. Meanwhile, the disciples of remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale of the Eastern Exalt's lineage were mostly experts in alchemy and renowned in the Tao of alchemy. In the entire world beyond worlds, The average level of alchemy of the clear light locale disciples was outstanding. This was due to the environment of the Misty Cloud Mountain as well as the uniqueness of the longevity manual. However, this did not mean that the successor of the Clear Light Monastery was weak. At that moment, the middle-aged man displayed the with green lightning finger recorded in the longevity martial manual. With a single finger, a green lightning appeared, instantly covering the sky. Lightning contained the true intent of destruction, and at the same time, it also had the intent of nourishing the growth of all living things and nurturing the creation of a world. After the life force of the wood spirit's cyan splendor was converted, it immediately transformed into the vicious and brutal lightning of destruction. It would have been fine if the middle-aged man hadn't made a move, but once he did, he used his full strength. As his right hand pointed towards Yen Zhaoge, his left hand abruptly extended upwards. A large flag fluttered in the wind. Soon, it turned into a stream of light and rose into the sky. Then, it turned into a heavy rain of light and fell down. Enveloped by this rain of light, Yen Zhaoge's gaze flickered slightly. After experiencing it for a moment, he already had an idea. Suppressing me, making me unable to use treasures? The middle-aged man's eyes were cold. This flag was a one-time consumable treasure that they had prepared to deal with Xue Chuqing. Now that Xue Chuqing wasn't here, Yen Zhaoge had appeared. It was a stroke of luck that he was able to make use of him. While Yen Zhaoge's fame had soared, people still had a limited understanding of him. This was especially so for those outside of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. However, no one dared to overlook the existence of the Extreme Yang Seal. For a treasure like the Extreme Yang Seal, while that spirit flag was wondrous, it would not be able to hold it back for too long. Therefore, that middle-aged man ignored the fact that he was a full 3 levels higher than Yen Zhaoge, who was at the 3rd level of the Martial Saint Realm, wanting to end this battle as quickly as possible. The other clear light Taoist temple martial artists also gathered around. Yen Zhaoge did not conceal his age. An expert of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint Realm, as young as him, was already shocking. There were clearly 3 fellow disciples guarding the entrance to the dimensional passageway outside, one of them even being a mid-seeing divinity martial saint. In the end, Yen Zhaoge had still managed to barge in. While it was still unknown what had happened to those 3 fellow disciples, the clear light locale martial practitioners present dared not let down their guard. Yen Zhaoge looked at the clump of green thunder that filled his entire field of vision, completely ignoring it. A figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The figure transformed into a stream of light and punched out, directly shattering the green lightning that was the size of a mountain. It was precisely the Northern Ocean clone who had acted. The Northern Ocean clone's silhouette flickered as he arrived before that 6th level martial saint. This violent punch caused the other party's eyelids to twitch madly. Where did such an expert appear from? This is a martial practitioner at the 5th level of the Martial Saint Realm. How many peak-seeing divinity experts of the 6th level of the Martial Saint Realm could possess such might? They all subconsciously thought, no wonder this person was able to break through the entrance guarded by senior apprentice brother Lao. And the others. It was not just due to the power of treasures like the Extreme Yang Seal. Just as this thought arose within the minds of the other party, even as the Northern Ocean clone made a move, Yen Zhaoge's figure abruptly moved as well. The acupoints of his entire body shook simultaneously, seeming to emanate radiance that resembled numerous twinkling stars amidst the night sky. Seeing this, all the clear light locale disciples were even more shocked than when they had seen the Northern Ocean clone. The acupoints of his entire body have all been refined to see divinity. How is this possible? The next moment, they realized that this was impossible. It is just an illusory internal universe that has yet to truly resonate with the actual universe. Still, before they could truly relax, Yin Zhaoge had already arrived before them with a single stride. He raised a palm, seemingly enveloping the entire sky. Yin Zhaoge first arrived before an opponent of the fourth level of the martial saint realm before descending with a palm. While it seemed like the heavenly broad creed palm, the opponent intuitively believed that he would be able to resist it. That clear light locale, martial practitioner of the fourth level of the martial saint realm, snorted coldly, placing one hand before his chest and raising the other upwards as he struck out with a palm towards Yin Zhaoge's palm. As soon as this stance was established, a green tree instantly appeared amid space, towering between the heavens and the earth, as it resembled a divine tree that connected to the heavens. Yin Zhaoge's palm descended towards the heavens, the very sky seemingly collapsing. Meanwhile, this greenwood heavenly towering palm of his was like a pillar that supported the heavens, supporting the collapsed sky once more. Seeing this, Yin Zhaoge was instantly amused. As their palms met, Yin Zhaoge's palm reversed the heavens and the earth, a majestic force that could overturn the heavens and the earth, directly breaking that green tree that connected to the heavens with a single palm. Kacha! A loud, clear, and ear-splitting sound rang out. That clear light locale disciple's arm was directly broken into many pieces. Yin Zhaoge's palm did not cease in the least, as it did not slow down in the slightest as it continued downwards. He suppressed his opponent's palm, forcibly bringing it down upon his head. A bang resounded as his opponent's head was directly smashed apart by Yin Zhaoge's palm, his palm and head both being reduced to a bloody paste. The other clear light locale disciples were rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied, not having thought at all that Yin Zhaoge would actually be ferocious to such an extent. A third-level martial saint, a merging avatar martial saint, directly slaying an opponent of the fourth level of the martial saint realm who had already refined his acupoints to see divinity with a single palm. Their fellow disciple of the fourth level of the martial saint realm had actually been unable to receive even a single blow. A descendant of remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale was not something that ordinary legacies could compare to. Even the more ordinary disciples of clear light locale would be elites amongst martial practitioners of the same cultivation level in the eastern vast heaven territory, the southeastern Yang heaven territory, anywhere else. Yet they had actually been slain with a single palm by someone who had yet to break through space and see true divinity. While they had heard news from the southeastern Yang heaven territory that Yin Zhaoge possessed shocking strength, still, not having personally clashed with Yin Zhaoge, no one would have thought that he would actually be powerful to such an extent, being so ferocious that it was a complete mess. Everything had happened so suddenly and unexpectedly that the others were not even able to act in time, as they could only watch helplessly as their fellow disciple was slain. Yin Zhaoge's expression was calm. "Capture me? I am also preparing to capture you. There are some things that I want to ask you." Still, after having finished asking them, Yin Zhaoge did not intend to leave them alive this time. After slaying his first opponent with a single cyclic heavenly seal, Yin Zhaoge strode forward, continuing towards the others. To be continued. Chapter 845. After killing his first opponent with a single palm, Yin Zhaoge turned his attention to the others. While it was said that they wanted to capture their opponents alive and interrogate them, their target was actually just that leader of the sixth level of the martial saint realm. This person obviously knew the most. None of them were able to use their saint weapons, so they could only rely on their own cultivation. After detecting Yin Zhaoge's shocking strength, that middle-aged man of the sixth level of the martial saint realm attempted to attack Yin Zhaoge himself. However, the Northern Ocean clone stood in his way, faster and more ferocious than him, as his continuous attacks left him completely unable to deal with them at all, weary of dealing with them. The expressions of the three clear light monastery disciples were unprecedentedly solemn. This Yen Zhaoge, what exactly is going on? Why do I feel like he's even stronger than Supreme Red Lotus Fu Ting? The order in which Yen Zhaoge looked for people was from lowest to highest. After having slain his first opponent, he shot towards another early-seeing divinity martial saint. It was a skinny young man in his 30s. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, a look of fear actually appeared on his face as he turned and attempted to flee. Still, let alone the fact that the legacy of his clear light locale did not specialize in speed. Even if it were fourth-level martial saints who were renowned for their speed, there would not be many who could outrun the current Yen Zhaoge. With a single stride, Yen Zhaoge was already behind him. Then, substituting a sword with his finger, he stabbed out, striking right into the middle of the other party's back. The thin young man didn't even make a sound. His body suddenly went limp, and he fell forward, falling towards the ground below. Now, however, the remaining clear light locale martial practitioner of the mid-seeing divinity stage instead charged over rampantly. His palms were in the form of yin and yang, one at the front and one at the back, one empty and one real. Between his hands, a vigorous true essence surged out. Streaks of green energy materialized into towering trees, existing in a point in space, nurturing in this person's palm. Next would begets fire, fire begets earth, earth begets metal, metal begets water, and water begets wood. The 5 elements intertwined, and soon a sharp golden light, a towering tree, a torrential river, a raging fire, and a towering mountain appeared between the man's palms. As it rotated, the power of the 5 elements strengthened each other, growing together and finally forming a vortex. The vortex continued to draw in and devour the spiritual energy of the 5 elements in the surroundings, and its speed was getting faster and faster. The dense life energy obtained from the longevity martial scripture was poured into this whirlpool. In the next moment, a suffocating, boundless, deathly aura arose from within, and its aura was even more shocking. The more 5 elements spiritual chi the whirlpool gathered, the faster it spun, and the stronger the whirlpool became. The stronger the whirlpool was, the more resolute the will of death would be, and the more ferocious the power would be, turning the 5 elements, reversing life and death. Remote Cloud Mountains Qinghua Monastery's unique skill, the 5 elements samsara wheel. Yen Zhaoge laughed. Good. He stretched out a finger, and a black and white dot appeared on his fingertip. It turned into a taiji yin and young fish spinning around. As the void shook, a vast expanse of white qi and black qi appeared at the same time, intertwining and twisting, shifting yin and yang. The dharma and logos of this world seemed to undergo a bizarre change at this moment. His opponent's ferocious palm force of the 5 elements, samsara wheel, was instantly unable to land on Yen Zhaoge. Instead, it strangely deviated to the side, its target shockingly becoming his fellow disciple, who was currently clashing with the Northern Ocean clone. That expert of the 6th level of the martial saint realm had already exerted his full strength in clashing with the Northern Ocean clone, as he was unable to divert his attention to pay attention to other changes in the surroundings. This caught him off guard, and he was almost injured by his own 5 elements, wheel of life and death. Fortunately, he was also extremely familiar with this supreme martial art, the 5 elements samsara wheel. As the death chi neared him, he virtually instinctively executed the 5 elements samsara wheel as well, reversing his Tao and forcibly turning death into life. Only then was he able to receive this sudden killing blow. However, with this interruption, the Northern Ocean clone instantly made use of this, punching him in the chest, causing him to vomit blood as he stumbled backwards in retreat. Martial practitioners who cultivated in the longevity martial scripture possessed incomparably powerful life force and shocking regenerative abilities. Even if they were injured, they would be able to recover rapidly. This punch of the Northern Ocean clones was still not enough to claim his life. However, the situation, which had already been bad in the first place, grew even worse now. With this middle-aged man of the 6th level of the Marshall Saint realm instantly fell into an irreversible disadvantage against the Northern Ocean clone. While his injuries were recovering, the Northern Ocean clone's attacks were even more ferocious, as they would only worsen his injuries. Meanwhile, the expression of the opponent facing Yen Zhaoge instantly changed slightly as his 5 elements samsara wheel missed. Yen Zhaoge laughed lightly, forming a sword with his index and middle fingers of his other hand as he stabbed out with another sword. This time, his sword contained the brutal sword intent of the immortal ending sword. This was a sword of the end of extermination, which affected the surrounding heavens and earth as well. The sword intent sent all things between the heavens and earth towards their end. The worse the environment, the more it resembled the end of the world, the more powerful the immortal exterminating 4 swords would be. His opponent's 5 elements, samsara wheel, turned life into death as the chi of death was abundant. The solitary chi of death was not a tribulation at the end of the world in the ordinary sense. Even before the end of the world, death could still be everywhere in the world. However, at the end of the world, all life forms would definitely be plunged into misery as they perished. Yen Zhaoge traversed the death chi with his immortal ending sword, his sword intent still being boosted as it grew more and more terrifying. That martial practitioner of the 5th level of the Marshall Saint realm casually willed life and death to be reversed between his palms once more as he wanted to turn the heavy chi of death back into life. For a martial practitioner of his cultivation base who had been immersed in the 5 elements samsara wheel for many years, it was not difficult for him to change it at will, as he could accomplish it in an instant without any delay at all. However, Yen Zhaoge was even faster than him. Before the changes in the 5 elements samsara wheel could occur, Yen Zhaoge had already broken through the seal of his palm force with a single sword, stabbing straight into his chest. That person instantly emitted a tragic groan, blood spurting from his chest. Yen Zhaoge was just about to press on when his heart suddenly jolted. "Huh? He's not dead." He suddenly swiveled his head, gazing downwards. That should have been where the corpse of the 2nd clear light locale disciple whom he had killed earlier had fallen. With Yen Zhaoge's vision, he was even able to see the corpse of the other party as it fell onto the ground, not moving in the slightest. However, having already begun studying the life creation heavenly scripture, Yen Zhaoge was now growing more and more sensitive to the life force of others. While that corpse was enveloped by the chi of death, a shocking life force was contained within. This person was not dead. At the same time, the other party realized that he had been exposed. The originally unmoving corpse suddenly shot up from the ground, continuing to flee into the distance. I shouldn't have missed just now. Something strange. Yen Zhaoge was expressionless as he directly gave up on that 5th level Martial Saint, instead chasing after this 4th level Martial Saint. Meanwhile, that 5th level Martial Saint did not make use of this chance to flee, as he instead continued to tangle with Yen Zhaoge. Yen Zhaoge deflected the attack of the person behind him with an yin-yang finger, descending towards that deserter. That deserter instantly emitted a tragic groan, his figure plummeting to the ground once more. Yen Zhaoge arrived behind him in a single step before raising his palm, striking down with yet another cyclic heavenly seal. Now, this thin youth who had feigned death and fled suddenly turned, facing Yen Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal head-on. He abruptly opened his mouth, the bright light of thunder suddenly surging within. The rain of light formed of that spirit flag that suffused the area between the heavens and the earth, preventing the use of various treasures, now descended. A purple orb was spat out from this thin youth's mouth, shooting straight towards Yen Zhaoge. To be continued. Chapter 846. As that orb of thunder appeared, Yen Zhaoge instantly knit his brows. He could not be more familiar with the violent, decisive, terrifying light of thunder within, because he himself frequently wielded it as well. One of the 9 heavenly immortal thunders, an instant's thunder. All its power was incinerated in an instant, concentrating all its power into a single strike, instantly unleashing it. This purple orb of thunder before him was clearly formed of a fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor. Yen Zhaoge's right eye throbbed slightly as wisps of thunder uncontrollably flickered within. That fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor, which had always been hidden within, seemed to be drawn away by an immense force now, wanting to break free of Yen Zhaoge's control and shoot towards the other party. Both being fragments of the eye of the Thunder Emperor, the larger one would automatically attract the smaller and weaker one. The fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor that this thin youth had hidden was even larger than the one that Yen Zhaoge possessed. At this moment, the power of the sacred artifact fragment, as well as that thin youth's own power, was being incinerated at full force, instantly erupting. The power contained within had already surpassed that of mid-grade sacred artifacts. The two sides were mere feet apart. An instant's thunder was extraordinarily fast, being an extremely ferocious existence even amongst the 9 heavenly immortal thunders. At such a close distance, an instant's thunder virtually did not give Yen Zhaoge any time to react at all as it erupted. The rain of light formed of the spirit flag, which prohibited the use of treasures, was not just targeted at Yen Zhaoge. It was similarly effective against these clear light locale disciples. Therefore, no matter how heaven-shaking and earth-overturning they had been all along, they had not used any external objects, as they had fought solely based on their cultivation bases. The other party had made use of this chance when the rain of light was about to disperse, making use of Yen Zhaoge's treasures not being exposed to suddenly make a move, wanting to catch Yen Zhaoge unawares. How could any of the wretched fear of feigning death or panic, of fleeing, still be seen on this thin youth's face now? His face was expressionless, his gaze calm as he had been waiting for this moment. Yen Zhaoge possessed supreme strength. This person had already determined earlier that he would not be Yen Zhaoge's match just based on his cultivation base. If he wanted to defeat the strong, his only chance would be to stall for time before making use of the instant when the rain of light dispersed to attack Yen Zhaoge with the power of the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. An instant's thunder instantly erupted. He was confident that even if Yen Zhaoge could control it as he pleased, he would still not have the chance to use it. All along, Yen Zhaoge had held the upper hand, fighting one against many, killing and injuring the 3 of them. Even if the rain of light dispersed, they would not think of bringing out weapons like the extreme Yang Seal to assist them at the first possible moment. They would definitely still have to rely on themselves, because it was enough to get rid of these enemies. This thin youth was precisely trying to grab hold of this mentality of Yen Zhaoge's. Earlier, he had feigned death and fled, all for the sake of making a comeback, with a sure-kill blow at the final moment. Yen Zhaoge's terrifying cyclic heavenly seal continued mightily descending towards the head of the thin youth. On one side was the flipping sky seal, and on the other was an instant's thunder. Both sides crossed each other and attacked each other's vitals. In an instant, they formed a momentum of mutual destruction. That person had used all of his strength to activate the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, and was powerless to dodge. Yen Zhaoge's palm slammed down on his head, directly causing his skull to explode. The top of his head caved in, forming a ghastly crater. However, the skinny youth was still alive. Although he was on the verge of death, streams of clear air surged to the top of his head. The longevity martial scripture's rotation of life and death was unleashed at full force at this moment, wanting to convert the death chi into life force and protect his life. A shocking scene occurred. Struck by a cyclic heavenly seal on the head of this thin youth, he actually forcibly managed to hold on. While his head was bleeding and his skull had exploded, he actually managed to hold on and not die. His body was weak as it had never been before, his mind buzzing and chaotic as everything before his eyes darkened, and he was unable to see clearly. The intense pain drove him mad before he became numb, before the pain continued driving him mad, just like that. However, it was just like this that this person forcibly stepped out of the gates of hell and back into the world of the living. I've succeeded. He opened his mouth. Yin Zhaoge, you didn't expect this, did you? From the very beginning, he had been aiming for this outcome. All of his efforts had not just been for the sake of perishing together with Yin Zhaoge. Beneath such a massive disadvantage, what he had wanted was still to turn defeat into victory, a true victory. He wanted to rely on his own resources to create such a desperate situation. However, he had the confidence to survive and take down Yin Zhaoge's life. Junior apprentice brother Xiang, that clear light locale, disciple of the 5th level of the martial saint realm, exclaimed in shock, wanting to approach. This thin youth, Xiang Yiyang, was actually just a breath more than a dead person as he urgently needed his fellow disciple to help him treat his injuries. However, the other party did not come over at all, instead emitting a muffled groan. Xiang Yiyang's heart shook as he struggled to open his eyes, seeing that even as Yin Zhaoge forced his fellow disciple into retreat, he was still grasping that Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment that had already lost its luster and fallen into slumber. He had not been able to see that when his head had been blown apart by Yin Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal earlier, that terrifying and instant thunder had also arrived before Yin Zhaoge. Now, a strange flow of qi appeared on Yin Zhaoge's forehead, forming a qi mass that resembled chaos. Obstructed by this qi mass that resembled chaos, the violent thunderbolts instantly halted slightly. This pause had already given Yin Zhaoge sufficient time to react. The light of thunder flew out of his right eye, his Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, directly surrendering to the enemy. However, Yin Zhaoge had long since been proficient in an instant's thunder as he could execute it with his own cultivation base, even without the aid of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. The shocking light of thunder erupted from within Yin Zhaoge's eyes as well. An instant's thunder against an instant's thunder. The violent thunderbolts directly exploded consecutively right before Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge's figure now swayed slightly as he had already spun to the other side, perfectly evading the fierce, rushing thunder. This fatal blow of his opponent landed on thin air, no longer being able to strike Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge forced back that clear light locale, disciple of the 5th level of the martial saint realm, who had wanted to help before reaching out and grabbing the slumbering Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. His original fragment had already merged with this larger fragment of his opponent's at this moment, the two added together becoming even more massive. Yin Zhaoge looked at Xiang Yiyang, whose head had caved in, his flesh and blood still mangled and in a miserable state. Xiang Yiyang stared wide-eyed at Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge was also looking at him, seeing that despite his severe injuries, the wound on his head was actually slowly healing and recovering at this moment. That shattered skull and blurry flesh and blood were clearly trembling and wriggling. Yin Zhaoge said, "You have the withered wood-receiving spring form, right? No wonder you have such powerful regenerative abilities." I've heard people of Golden Court Mountain mention that there is someone at Clear Light Locale called Xiang Yiyang, the most outstanding expert of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory's new generation. He possesses the miraculous physique of the withered wood receiving spring form, cultivating in a supreme martial art like the longevity martial scripture, possessing limitless vitality as he is famed for being undying against enemies of the same cultivation level. How rare being able to personally witness such a rare physique. Yan Zhaoge clicked his tongue in wonder. Sadly, I have never seen what you look like. Otherwise, I would have recognized you immediately. Yan Zhaoge suddenly laughed. I still have to congratulate you. Your famed reputation of being undying against opponents of the same cultivation level can forever be preserved after today. Chapter 847. While Yan Zhaoge was smiling, Xiang Yang and the others all felt a chill run down their spines. His reputation of not dying against opponents of the same cultivation level would be preserved forever. If he were to die today at the hands of Yan Zhaoge, who was a cultivation level lower than him, wouldn't that mean that he would truly never be killed again by opponents of the same cultivation level? Some people might think that since you were able to receive a palm of mine in such a situation, I might as well spare your life. Yan Zhaoge curled his lips. Still, I don't think that way. It would be fine if there are no major conflicts between us. Still, when dealing with enemies, my goal has always been that there is nothing that cannot be resolved with a single palm. If there is, we can just use another palm. With that, he raised his palm, directly executing yet another cyclic heavenly seal. With a bang, the powerless struggling Xiang Yang was slammed into the center of the earth by Yan Zhaoge's palm, not even his bones remaining. Seeing this, that clear light locale martial practitioner of the 5th level of the martial saint realm felt helpless as his mouth was filled with bitterness. In truth, besides that middle-aged man of the late-seeing divinity stage, Xiang Yang was actually the second strongest expert of their group this time. While his cultivation base was higher, in actual combat, Xiang Yang of the 4th level of the martial saint realm was stronger. As the descendant of the younger generation that the Eastern Exalt thought most highly of, Xiang Yang's potential and status were extraordinary even amongst fellow disciples of Clear Light Locale. While he was not renowned beneath the heavens like the Grand Red Lotus Fu Ting, Xiang Yang was similarly a renowned genius of the entire world beyond worlds. Even as he presided proudly over the eastern vast heaven territory, experts of other lands were also aware of his name. In terms of attack, defense, speed, and so on, he might not be the strongest. Still, in terms of vitality and recovery speed after being injured, Xiang Yang, who possessed the withered, would receive spring body, and cultivated in the longevity martial scripture, could virtually be said to be a peak existence amongst martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. In his past experiences, he had relied on his powerful recovery abilities to forcibly wear down countless experts whose offensive and defensive abilities were superior to his, even bringing down many opponents whose cultivation bases were higher than his. This was also why Yan Zhaoge had not been able to kill Xiang Yang with a single sword when he had feigned death earlier. This was also why he had dared to execute such a risky plan, forcibly taking a blow from Yan Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal. Sadly, his killing blow had been dispelled by Yan Zhaoge. However strong his vitality and regenerative abilities were, it would still be impossible for him to quickly recover after suffering a single cyclic heavenly seal from Yan Zhaoge. With that, if Yan Zhaoge unleashed a second palm, Xiang Yang would only be able to close his eyes and await death. He had not been killed by an opponent of the same cultivation level, nor had he been killed by an opponent with a higher cultivation base than him. Instead, he had died at the hands of Yan Zhaoge, who was a cultivation level lower than him. Xiang Yi died with everlasting regret. Yan Zhaoge smiled as he kept that fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor that had fallen into a deep slumber. It's even larger than mine. You should have already swallowed and fused with quite a few smaller fragments earlier. You should have spent quite a bit of effort in gathering this treasure. I should be thanking you for saving me quite a bit of effort. he kept the thunder orb before turning and lunging towards that middle-aged man of the 6th level of the Martial Saint realm. The other party had already long since wanted to retreat and flee, just that he was helpless, that his speed was inferior to the Northern Ocean clones. A bright moon rose in the foreign space, and endless clear splendor sprinkled down on heaven and earth. This time, Feng Yinsheng did not wield the cold sun divine saber, as she instead wielded the extreme Yin crown in battle, taking on that clear light locale martial practitioner of the 5th level of the Martial Saint realm for Yen Zhaoge. The roar of a dragon resounded as a light dragon of black and white descended from the solitary moon in the sky, instantly obstructing that clear light locale martial practitioner. Meanwhile, Yen Zhaoge and the Northern Ocean clone moved in unison, causing that middle-aged man of the 6th level of the Martial Saint realm to fall into an even more disadvantageous position, with the rain of light formed of the spirit flags vanishing. Everyone being able to wield their accompanying treasures would only be more beneficial to Yen Zhaoge. If not for the fact that he had to capture this opponent who had the highest cultivation base and was likely to possess the most information, Yen Zhaoge would have ended the battle even more quickly. In terms of the style and characteristics of the martial arts they cultivated in martial practitioners of the longevity martial scripture were exceedingly stable, lacking in initiative. Against such an opponent, Yen Zhaoge would be hard-pressed to end the battle quickly. Still, it would not be hard for him to achieve victory. If it were an opponent like Lin Hanhua or Fu Ting, who was at the Seeing Divinity stage, the battle would be very dangerous, as it would be either one of them or the other. Because Xiang Yang simultaneously possessed the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, and the Withered would give spring body, he was rather special compared to his fellow disciples. He had the capital to go all out. It was only Yen Zhaoge who had been able to resolve his meticulously prepared final killing blow without any mishaps. If it were Fu Ting, if she had not been able to draw on the phoenix woven brocade to protect herself in time, she might have suffered a setback. Meanwhile, while Fu Ting was able to defeat an opponent of the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm who cultivated in the longevity martial scripture, it was still insufficient to force Xiang Yang, who possessed the Withered would give spring body into a perilous situation like Yen Zhaoge had. However, if it were Fu Ting who had attained the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm, the Seeing Divinity stage, the threat she posed to Yen Zhaoge would be even greater than that of Xiang Yang. After Yen Zhaoge had successfully suppressed his opponent with the help of the evil sword Tao Tai and the heaven-swallowing earth-devouring box, he had once again assisted Feng Yinsheng in dealing with that remaining clear light locale martial practitioner of the 5th level of the Martial Saint realm. As the battle neared its end, Yen Zhaoge did not let his guard down. After he had taken care of Li Cheng and the others who were guarding the dimensional passageway entrance, before entering, he had casually set up a small mechanism, leaving it in the heavens and earth of the world beyond, worlds outside the dimensional passageway entrance. At this moment, Yen Zhaoge acutely sensed that the mechanism he had left behind had vanished. The mechanism had originally been there to serve as a warning. Now, however, it had vanished without any warning whatsoever, as if it had never existed in the first place. It had not been able to inform Yen Zhaoge of any information, nor had it been able to slow or obstruct him in the slightest, as it had simply vanished into thin air just like that. Still, this phenomenon in itself had already informed Yen Zhaoge of many important pieces of information. Someone was approaching with an extremely high cultivation base. The newcomer had not been intending to destroy the mechanism Yen Zhaoge had left behind. Still, just the act of his arrival had caused a change in the heavens and earth around the dimensional passageway entrance, causing the mechanism to be hard-pressed to maintain as it had naturally perished. Someone with such a cultivation base had to be an expert on the level of the Shadow Mountain Sword King Lin Hanhua at the very least. Even if they were not at the same cultivation base, they should at least possess equivalent strength. considering Lin Hanhua's domineering strength that was unparalleled amongst those at the same cultivation level. The newcomer's cultivation base might be even higher. This was a low estimate. If one were to look up, it could be any level higher. Yen Zhaoge smacked his lips. While I don't want to drift amidst the chaotic flows of space again, if there really is no other way, I can only try again. As he thought this, Yen Zhaoge began setting up a formation within this foreign dimension, which was similar to the prime Earth reversal formation that Qi Wei had previously set up. When necessary, he could make use of this formation to collapse space, forcibly ripping open a spatial crevice within this foreign dimension, so that Yen Zhaoge would not have to walk through the dimensional passageway entrance that he had entered from earlier as he left this place. Still, just as Yen Zhaoge was setting up the formation, he felt intense tremors emanating from the entrance of the dimensional passageway. It was not that someone had entered. Instead, a great battle was currently unfolding between the heavens and earth of the world beyond worlds outside the dimensional passageway. The intensity of that battle caused even Yen Zhaoge and the others who were within the foreign dimension to be affected, as it was as though they were being tossed about amidst tempestuous waves. To be continued. Chapter 848. Currently, in the world beyond worlds, deep within the mountains where the eastern vast heaven territory and the northeastern sky heaven territory intersected, the heavens and earth were separated into two different worlds by a formless boundary. To the south of the mountain range, the heavens and earth were all green as streams of clear qi soared into the sky. A towering tree stood tall, its 9 branches extending in all directions, extending into the void. The dense leaves were clearly formed of numerous streaks of green lightning, flickering with dazzling radiance. The vigorous vitality that nurtured the growth of all living beings and the terrifying power that destroyed all living beings appeared at the same time, filling the void. To the north of the mountain range, the heavens and earth were all purple. Other than thunderbolts, there was nothing else. To the north of the mountain range, the heavens and earth were completely immersed in a sea of thunderbolts. There was a figure on the trunk of the ancient tree in the south, and the center of the sea of thunderbolts in the north. Their bodies flickered with a seemingly everlasting radiance, resembling the numerous stars in the sky. At this moment, the universe within their bodies perfectly fused with the universe outside their bodies, as if they were one. The universe formed by the human body was like a real starry sky of the universe. The clear qi and the purple thunder clashed unceasingly, extinguishing one after another. Very quickly, new ones were formed, and they were in a stalemate. The purple thunder was more powerful, while the clear qi was reborn faster. Just based on the current stalemate, the two sides were evenly matched. Instead, there seemed to be some similarities between the principles and concepts of the two great experts' powers. A voice resounded from the sea of thunderbolts in the north. "You came here personally. Are you determined to exterminate all of us?" The figure on the ancient tree in the south said indifferently, "If not for so many people secretly conniving, it wouldn't have dragged on until today. Not mentioning that we all come from the same source, just your thoughts and actions alone. Are you going to betray Taoism?" A deep rumble resounded from the sea of thunderbolts, shaking the heavens and earth. The figure on the ancient tree said indifferently, "How is that possible?" The other party pressed on. "Then why are you so reluctant to give up? What is your purpose?" The voice on the ancient tree said indifferently, "I just feel that the earthly sovereign's thoughts are correct, and I'm cooperating and implementing them." The other party was silent for a moment before he said slowly, "The earthly sovereign has not expressed anything regarding this matter. Whether what that lass is doing is right or wrong in the long run, we are all clear." From the sea of lightning, a tall figure slowly walked out. This figure had a jade belt around his waist and a purple crown on his head. He was a white-haired old man with a ferocious face and a purplish-red face. With every step he took, it was as if a clap of thunder rang out in the world, causing the space around him to tremble. The boundaries and environment of the world beyond worlds were far firmer and more stable than those of ordinary lower worlds, as they were hard to shake. Being able to cause the environment of the world to be affected to such an obvious degree, the strength of this purple-crowned old man could be seen at a glance. He stared at the 9 ancient trees in the south and shouted in a deep voice, "Retreat!" Although this is the border between the 2 territories, if one were to really calculate it carefully, it is the territory of my northeastern sky heaven territory. The person on the ancient tree didn't seem to be affected at all. His tone was still indifferent. Previously, you were just conniving or secretly helping her. Today, are you openly protecting this woman? The purple-crowned elder's expression did not change. So what if I am? If you don't help your own people, are you going to help outsiders to deal with your own people? If the other party gathers all the heavenly essence stones, neither you nor I might be able to live peacefully. We are the beneficiaries in this matter. Instead of helping, you are going to bite back. As the purple-crowned elder said this, fury had already appeared on his face. The figure on the ancient tree gradually became clear, revealing a middle-aged man with a scholarly appearance. He wore a green, scholarly robe and had an elegant demeanor. He said slowly, "Fortune lies within disaster, and disaster lurks within fortune. While this is correct in the long run, it could immediately bring about a great calamity within a short period of time. Without the present, what future is there to speak of?" The middle-aged man in scholarly robes sighed, shaking his head. That purple-crowned old man said coldly, "It is hard to have one's cake and eat it too. At this time, we can only rely on our hearts. Everyone has their own ideas. No one should force the other. This old man does not care about the matters of the younger generation. That will depend on that lass's own fortune. However, if you want to personally act, you will first have to ask if the saber in this old man's hand agrees." While he did not draw his weapon, nor did he attack, the thunder light around the purple-crowned old man's body had already begun gradually transforming into numerous sabers that seemed capable of severing the heavens and the earth. "It will not be easy for me to defeat you, but it will be even more difficult for you to defeat me. In a fight with me, you can only seek a draw at most." The purple-crowned old man only condensed his saber without unleashing it, but the nearby space-time began to distort. The middle-aged man in scholarly robes said calmly, "We are of the same origin but of different sex, so we know each other very well. In terms of actual combat, I am indeed slightly inferior to you. However, you have shown too much of your edge, which is actually not the proper way. If you want to break through a bottleneck, it will be hard for you to avoid having insufficient strength later on." The purple-crowned old man said, "That's right. You are younger than this old man, but you have already reached the same height as this old man. However, if you want to boast, wait until you truly surpass this old man from behind." The middle-aged man in scholarly robes nodded. "All right, but let me give you a word of advice. You can protect her for now, but you cannot protect her forever. It is fine if you protect her this time. However, if she is left to protect you, the entire northeastern sky heaven territory may suffer a great calamity." Saying so, the middle-aged man in scholarly robes turned and left. That ancient tree of 9 branches that obscured the southern sky also gradually turned illusory, finally vanishing. The purple-crowned old man said calmly, "There is no need for you to worry about what this old man will do next." Even as the middle-aged man in scholarly robes left, he said, "The disciples of my lineage are merely obeying orders. Please do not make things difficult for them." The purple-crowned old man said, "This old man will naturally not make things difficult for them. However, This old man will not care about how the juniors below fight amongst themselves. Those who dare to trespass into my northeastern sky heaven territory are asking for whatever happens to them. The figure of the middle-aged man in scholarly robes vanished. The purple-crowned old man stood where he was treading on space as he remained silent. After a long time, he sighed towards the heavens, shaking his head as he turned and entered the dimensional passageway, arriving in the foreign dimension. After entering, the purple-crowned old man's originally frowning brows relaxed. Still, they quickly knit once more. That lass has already disappeared. Who was it here who battled with those youngsters of the eastern vast heaven territory? His gaze swept over, penetrating through space, as it fell directly on Yen Zhaoga. This old man is Lu Xinggu. Who are you? Yen Zhaoga smiled, bowing. I am surnamed Yen Zhaoga. Greetings, Northeastern Exalt. Lu Xinggu, the lord of the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory, the chief of Green Sky Mountain's grave Thunder Palace, one of the world beyond worlds 10 exalts, the Northeastern Exalt. Yen Zhaoga. This name sounds rather familiar. Looking at Yen Zhaoga, Lu Xinggu's gaze suddenly flickered. Wait, your appearance. Chapter 849. The conversation between the two exalts in the heavens and earth of the world beyond worlds could only be heard by them. Yen Zhaoga would not be able to hear it. Still, facing the Northeastern Exalt Lu Xinggu was naturally better for him than facing the Eastern Exalt. After all, judging from the attitude of Li Cheng, Xiang Yiyang, and the others, it was obvious that the people from the remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale in the eastern vast heaven territory were not very friendly towards Xue Chuqing. Even her descendants, Yen Zhaoga, would be implicated. While he did not know what the Northeastern Exalt Lu Xinggu thought of Xue Chuqing, a great battle had erupted outside earlier. From the feeling of being evenly matched, the person fighting Lu Xinggu was at the same level of cultivation as him. Since this was where the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory and the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory intersected, it was most likely to be the Eastern Exalt. Not hesitating to fight, Lu Xinggu's attitude towards Xue Chuqing and Yen Zhaoga was most likely the opposite of that of the Eastern Exalt. From the looks of it, the Northeastern Exalt Lu Xinggu was a party that could be trusted and fought over. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that the two parties had colluded to put on a show to win trust. But this possibility was very low. If the words of Li Cheng and the others were true, it would not be difficult for experts on the level of the Eastern Exalt and the Northeastern Exalt to locate Xue Chuqing. Even innate divination wasn't omnipotent. The difference in their cultivation level was too huge. It was harder than ascending the heavens to detect the other party's movements. It was just that peak experts of this level were mutually restraining one another. Therefore, the Eastern Exalt had only sent his disciples out to search for Xue Chuqing's whereabouts. Now that he had personally rushed over, he was immediately intercepted by Lu Xinggu, who was also a paragon. From this perspective, it also proved that the Northeast and the East were not on the same path. Therefore, as Lu Xinggu's gaze suddenly flickered as he appraised Yen Zhaoga's appearance in earnest, Yen Zhaoga smiled very calmly, cupping his hands towards Lu Xinggu once more. My mother is Xue Chuqing, known as the Snow Crane of Kunlun. Perhaps the Northeastern Exalt has seen my mother before, thus feeling that I look rather familiar. Lu Xinggu stared at Yen Zhaoga for a while before he suddenly laughed loudly. Ha ha! Although she's still a little girl to me, it's not strange for her to have children if she gets married early. I just didn't expect that the little girl from back then had already been a mother for so many years. He wasn't flaunting his seniority. Among the 10 Supremes, Lu Xinggu's age and seniority were on the higher side. Let alone Xue Chuqing, even before Yen Zhaoga's Grand Master, Yuan Zhengfeng, had been born, Lu Zhenggu had already long since shaken the heavens and the earth, his name having shaken the world for who knew how many years. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, he clicked his tongue in admiration. This old man now remembers where I heard your name before. You indeed have your unique points, not relying solely on treasures like the extreme Yang seal. Still, shouldn't you be over at the southeastern Yang Heaven territory? Yan Zhaoge smiled. I went adventuring and temporarily left the world beyond worlds, arriving in extra-dimensional space. When I returned, I landed in a wound of the sky nearby. Lu Zhenggu shook his head slowly. If I hadn't run into you in this foreign dimension, this old man really wouldn't dare be certain that you're related to that little girl, Xue Chuqing. He quickly looked around. Your mother isn't here? Yan Zhaoge smiled bitterly. Before I came here, she had already left. To tell you the truth, I have always been searching for my mother. Lu Zhenggu grunted. If she doesn't want you to find her, it would indeed be very difficult for you to do so. Yan Zhaoge probed. I wonder if the Northeastern Exalt knows of my mother's whereabouts. Can you tell me about it? It isn't just me. My father misses her greatly as well. It seemed like this Northeastern Exalt indeed found Xue Chuqing to be very pleasing to the eye, as he was very amicable towards Yan Zhaoge as well. He said rather patiently, this old man doesn't know where she is either. At most, someone told this old man where she is. When this old man went to find her, she was unable to predict or avoid me. From what this old man knows, she frequently changes her location. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, Lu Zhenggu finally sighed. It might be that she doesn't miss you. Still, she is unable to see you. Otherwise, you would not have been able to live in peace for so many years. She is still unable to use divination to divine you and your father, or even those related to you. Some people who are looking for her are similarly proficient in divination, proficient in finding mysteries within, as they specifically wait to find clues in this area. That last doesn't count you. Unless those who are looking for her come into direct contact with you, it would be hard for them to know of your relationship with her. Yan Zhaoge nodded. He had also heard of divination techniques before. He asked, Are there many people looking for my mother? The purple-crowned old man chuckled. That's right. It isn't just those from Clear Light Locale. Many others are looking for her as well. Still, Clear Light Locale is more persistent. After glancing at Yan Zhaoge, Lu Zhenggu smiled. Killing so many of Clear Light Locale's disciples this time, you are really vicious and powerful. Yan Zhaoge asked softly, They slandered my mother for stealing a treasure. That is why they are pursuing her. Lu Zhenggu said, Since you have already used the word slandered, this old man has no need to speak further on this. Yan Zhaoge asked, Then, may I ask the Northeastern Exalted why are so many people searching for my mother? Lu Zhenggu did not answer this time, as he just said, Ask her yourself when you see her. If she feels that she can tell you, you will naturally know. The lofty Northeastern Exalt actually had an extremely secretive attitude towards this matter. Even as Yan Zhaoge felt rather shocked, he also felt more interested in this matter. Still, alarm bells also rang out in his heart. This matter was most likely not minor. Meanwhile, this matter might be related to Sikong Qing, Yu Baoqi, and Li Cheng. Yan Zhaoge's expression did not change as he thought, while the Eastern Exalt has even accepted Li Cheng as his disciple. From the looks of it, even the Northeastern Exalt and the Eastern Exalt are still unaware of the relationship between junior apprentice sister Sikong and my mother, not connecting the two sides. The Eastern Exalt should have long since discovered the runes contained within Li Cheng. Still, he might have lacked similar people on hand. Even if numerous runes were gathered together, it would still be hard to explain the meaning contained within them, let alone when there was only one or two of them on hand. Since the northeastern exalt was unwilling to discuss the reason, Yen Zhaoge did not continue harping on this topic. I wonder if the eastern exalt was also here just now, Yen Zhaoge asked. Lu Xinggu said, that's right. Still, this old man has already persuaded him to leave. I have caused trouble for you, northeastern exalt. This yen thanks you on behalf of my mother, Yen Zhaoge said. Back at Golden Court Mountain, Yen Zhaoge had heard Mu Jun, Chen Zhiliang, and the others mention this before. The northeastern exalt and the eastern exalt were actually of the same lineage. Both of them could be considered to have obtained a portion of the direct lineage of the southern extremity longevity emperor of the four imperials of Taoism. Lu Xinggu smiled. You don't have to worm things out of this old man. There is no harm in telling you about this. Your mother's lineage is of the same lineage as this old man and clear light locale. Your mother's lineage was once filled with experts who were even more powerful than the other two lineages. Chapter 850. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor was also known as the Jade, Clear, True King. His full title was the Exalted Divine Sky Jade, Clear, True King Longevity Emperor, unifying the Heavenly Origin Sage, Heavenly Lord. He was one of the four imperials of Taoism, alongside the Purple Tenuity Polaris Emperor and the Earth Queen. He was one of the peak figures of Taoism. He was not the old longevity god or the southern extremity old man. Instead, he was the Lord of Divine Thunder, who controlled the weather of the four seasons and could summon the wind and rain, controlling ghosts and gods of thunder and lightning. Therefore, he was also known as the Lord of Thunderbolt Assistance, Heavenly Lord. The longevity scripture of the eastern vast heaven territories remote cloud mountains clear light locale, and the northeastern sky heaven territories clear sky mountains grave thunder palaces divine sky true art were both of the direct lineage of the southern extremity longevity emperor. Therefore, it was said in the world beyond worlds that the lineages of the northeastern exalt and the eastern exalt were of the same lineage. It was just that their views differed on many issues as their relationship was not usually harmonious. What Yen Zhaoge cared about was that it was rumored that the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor was also proficient in the life creation heavenly scripture of the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures. Connecting this with how the Northeastern Exalt Lu Xinggu was so familiar with his mother and how the Eastern Exalt did not seem unfamiliar with her, Yen Zhaoge could not help but guess. Meanwhile, Lu Xinggu very straightforwardly confirmed Yen Zhaoge's guess. Speaking of Xue Chuqing's master, Lu Xinggu's expression turned rather solemn. Your mother's great-grand master was one of the Kunlun 9 luminaries, the Exalted Wood Luminary. Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself, is that so? The whereabouts of the Exalted Wood Luminary had always been a mystery. While it was said that he had perished, it had never been verified. Rumors of this major figure were rather rare in the world beyond worlds. This was the first time Yen Zhaoge had heard someone mention him of his own accord. It was just that he had never thought that his mother was actually the descendant of this major figure. Lu Xinggu continued, many years ago, there were actually not 5 emperors in the world beyond worlds. It was just that few people knew of one of them. He was the disciple of the Exalted Wood Luminary and your mother's Grand Master. After hearing this, Yen Zhaoge secretly pulled back the corners of his mouth. This sounds like an existence similar to a dark history. The fact that few people knew about venerable sovereigns actually meant one thing. The other top figures, namely the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, did not approve of his existence. At least, most of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors did not approve of his existence. Connecting this to Xue Chuqing's current situation, it was very likely that they were of the same lineage, or even that they were in a predicament because of the same reason. Now that he thought about it, it was not without reason that Lu Xinggu had been so secretive about the reason why Xue Chuqing was being pursued. At this point, Yen Zhaoge wanted to verify an earlier guess. Senior, was my mother's Grand Master on very good terms with the dim Radiant Emperor that year? After glancing at Yen Zhaoge rather surprisedly, Lu Xinggu slowly nodded. That's right. Yen Zhaoge's gaze was rather deep and distant. He suddenly thought of the mysterious death of the dim Radiant Emperor Yin Tianxia and the decline of the dim Radiant sect that year. Could it be related to his mother's lineage? This was because Yin Tianxia had become too deeply involved with the dim Radiant sect, crossing certain boundaries. Back then, Yen Zhaoge had thought that the dim Radiant sect would be conquering extra-dimensional space in a place like the 9 underworlds. Still, after learning of the existence of the wall and knowing that Buddhism still existed, Yen Zhaoge could not help but consider that he might have oversimplified things back then. Still, if it was a problem with Buddhism, what was the northeastern exalt Lu Xinggu worried about? While the world beyond worlds was not like the roving jade heavens where everyone knew about the existence of Buddhism, Lu Xinggu definitely knew about it. Yen Zhaoge probed. May I ask if this is related to Buddhism, northeastern exalt? Lu Xinggu glanced deeply at Yen Zhaoge, chuckling, You really know quite a lot. Still, this shouldn't have been told to you by that girl, right? Yen Zhaoge answered candidly, When I left the world beyond worlds earlier and traveled extra-dimensional space, I inadvertently flipped over that wall, arriving in a world of Buddhism known as the Obscured Way World. Lu Xinggu nodded before shaking his head. You guessed wrong. It has nothing to do with those thieving baldies. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, he said, Do not try to get information out of this old man. This is for your own good. The purple-crowned old man's expression did not look like he was joking at all. Yen Zhaoge narrowed his eyes, saying solemnly, I will remember it. Lu Xinggu nodded approvingly. This old man knows that you have many doubts. Still, as I said earlier, if you are able to meet your mother one day, you can ask her yourself. If she feels that she can tell you, you will naturally know. Yen Zhaoge asked, Senior, how are my mother's Grand Master and Master or the other seniors of her lineage now? Lu Xinggu shook his head. They have a single lineage. Your mother's master has already perished. As for her Grand Master, he has not appeared in this world for many years. This old man is also unable to contact him. He might already be dead, or he might be in some heavens and earth outside of the world beyond worlds. Anyway, he was definitely not in the world beyond worlds. Otherwise, Xue Chuqing would not have to hide all over the place like this. He glanced at Yen Zhaoge before continuing. Those whose cultivation bases surpass the martial saint realm and above can freely traverse and remain in the lower worlds, ignoring the rejection of the power of dimensions. Yen Zhaoge nodded slightly. So that's how it is. Lu Xinggu asked, From the looks of it, besides killing some clear light locale disciples, how many have you captured as well? How are you going to deal with them? Yen Zhaoge smiled. Even if I had not made a move at the start, not killing a single one of them, due to my mother, everyone would still be enemies rather than friends. Now that I've killed a few of them, there's no need to leave the rest alive. It doesn't matter whether I kill them or send them off with good food and drinks. Since that's the case, I'll naturally give them a quick death. Yen Zhaoge spread his palms apart. In capturing them, I originally wanted to ask them some things. Still, you have already told me all that I want to know. If you do not tell me, it is impossible for them to know. There is also no point in keeping them alive. Lu Xinggu chuckled strangely. Good fella, no wonder you were able to cause such a huge disturbance. He asked, Where do you intend to go next? Back to the Eastern Yang Heaven territory? Yen Zhaoge answered, That is indeed my intention. Lu Xinggu pondered for a moment before saying, Forget it. This old man will send you on a trip. Otherwise, you will have to pass through the entire Eastern Vast Heaven territory. No one knows about the situation here now. Still, as soon as it is leaked, clear light locale will naturally not remain indifferent. Also, the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory is their territory at the end of the day. The relationship between you and that last Xue Chuqing should be kept a secret for as long as possible. Saying thus, Lu Zhenggu waved a hand, bringing Yan Zhaoge and the others along and flying into the skies. While the martial arts they cultivated and were different, they all originated from the lineage of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor that year as many things were similar. This lineage of martial arts contained both life force and killing intent, the chi of life force and violent thunderbolts. Taking in everything was the right way. Lu Zhenggu and the martial practitioners of Grave Thunder Palace of Green Sky Mountain were mostly inclined towards being tough and ferocious, as this actually went against the normal principles of their lineage. It was easier to encounter bottlenecks in the advancement of one's cultivation base, making it harder for one to break through. Still, it was precisely because of this that Lu Zhenggu's personal strength was exceptionally powerful, with him sending them off. Even if they encountered the Eastern Exalt in the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, Yan Zhaoge would not have to worry about him unless Lu Zhenggu went to trample on remote Cloud Mountain. To be continued. Chapter 8:51. Led by Lu Zhenggu, Yan Zhaoge's group quickly traversed the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, returning to the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory. Lu Zhenggu went straight to Golden Court Mountain. Since he had come to the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory, he might as well meet the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia. Yan Zhaoge seemed to be deep in thought. Feng Yunsheng said, "It looks like when we met the Southeastern Exalt back then, his unspoken words were not just about you cultivating in the immortal ending sword manual. It might also be related to Senior Xue. Perhaps he had already seen some clues from your appearance back then, just that he could not be sure and could not directly ask you." Hearing her words, Yan Zhaoge nodded slowly. That is not impossible. Still, the Southeastern Exalt seems to be turning a blind eye to this matter, unlike the Eastern Exalt. As Lu Zhenggu met with Chao Jia, Yan Zhaoge's group stopped at Golden Court Mountain once more. Mu Jun had already set off for the Royal Reed Sea once more. In the year that Yan Zhaoge had been away, the Royal Reed Sea, where the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory and the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory intersected, had still been surging with undercurrents. The main problem was not within the Royal Reed Sea and the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory. Instead, it was that the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory had always been unstable. The two sides had always been in conflict over Tang Yonghao's Phoenix Bone. As the front line of the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory, besides Lin Hanhua, who had been sitting over there, Mu Jun had also hurried over. Apart from that, other peak experts of the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory had also hurried over on the orders of the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia. Still, Zhang Ming and Chen Zhiliang had remained at Golden Court Mountain. Having lingered here previously, Yan Zhaoge had long since become familiar with the people here. Therefore, Yan Zhaoge did not have to worry about a lack of information channels now. Little friend Yan, you and your father really cannot be judged by common sense. I was still saying earlier that your father was truly miraculous, actually lighting up Starfire within a short period of time and advancing further, attaining the 5th level of the Martial Saint Realm. Never would I have thought that you would not lose out, as you have already perfectly merged your body, avatar, and soul, attaining the 3rd level of the Martial Saint Realm. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, Zhang Ming shook his head as he sighed in admiration. How long has it been since you became a martial saint? Beside him, Chen Zhiliang similarly had a look of disbelief on his face. I personally saw your father break through 2 stages consecutively, advancing from the 2nd level of the Martial Saint Realm to the 4th level of the Martial Saint Realm, breaking through space to see true divinity and ascending to the world beyond worlds. Still, never would I have thought that he would actually advance to the next level in such a short period of time. And little friend Yen, you are even more inconceivable. How old are you now? Yen Zhaoga smiled slightly. I had some fortuitous encounters. I've made a fool of myself in front of you. It was naturally a good thing that his father had advanced into the 5th level of the martial saint realm, his strength rising once more. Yen Zhaoga did not find it strange that Yen Di had improved so much. Yen Di's cultivation was like his saber, forging ahead with an indomitable will. The fiercer and faster he walked, the smoother it would be. If he stopped to stabilize himself, it might be harmful. Generally speaking, the higher the realm, the harder it would be to break through, and the more time and energy it would take to advance. In the 10th level of the martial saint realm, it was normal for many experts to remain at a certain cultivation level for decades, or even centuries at a time. However, while this logic was applicable to others, it was not applicable to Yen Di. It was just that this was not without its drawbacks. If one unceasingly ascended 100,000 feet high peak and walked too fast, as soon as they stopped, they might very well fall straight down. Yen Di's footsteps were to unceasingly break through brambles and thorns, forcibly breaking through one bottleneck after another. If there was a bottleneck that he was unable to break through for a long time, while it might just be a halt for others, it might be a huge blow to Yen Di's head. The later this bottleneck arrived, and the higher one's cultivation base, the more dangerous it would be. It might even directly consign one to eternal damnation. The heavenly Tao was constant. There were gains and losses. Behind the limitless glory, there would always be difficulties that outsiders could not see. It was like how Yen Zhaoga had chosen to simultaneously cultivate in the 3 purities. Behind the glory was a difficulty that far surpassed others. The reason he had been able to advance triumphantly all this time was because his accumulation, resources, knowledge, and experience similarly far surpassed others. Under the same conditions, if Yen Zhaoga walked the same path as most people, his cultivation base would rise even faster than it was now. Meanwhile, the path that Yen Di walked was the most suitable path for him. Yen Zhaoga often thought that perhaps this was a path that only Yen Di could walk. If it was anyone else, they would probably have long since fallen from the clouds. Yen Di was exceptionally talented in the Tao of martial arts, shocking the heavens beneath the heavens. This might be his most unique aspect. Yen Zhaoga was even more interested in the fact that Yen Di's current situation did not seem to be a coincidence. It was just that all of this was like looking at flowers through a fog, as he was still unable to see through it all too clearly. It was also precisely because of this that Yen Zhaoga felt even more curious. Zhang Ming and Chen Zhiliang naturally did not know what Yen Zhaoga was thinking. They just felt rather amazed at the rapid improvement of the cultivation bases of the Yen family father and son. Right, little friend Yen, there's still one more thing. Chen Zhiliang's expression turned somewhat solemn. The Grand Xian dynasty has sent reinforcements over in the Royal Reed Sea. Actually, to the North Sea Sword Pavilion, Copperman Island, and the other powers who had always been operating in the Royal Reed Sea, the other party could not be considered a newcomer. On the contrary, they were extremely familiar with him. It was just that having not seen him for some time, everyone had thought that he had long since died of this world. The Grand Xian dynasty's second monarch, King Xuanqing. It would still be fine if it was just that. However, King Xuanqing, who had been an early immortal bridge martial saint that year, had already reached the 8th level of the martial saint realm, the mid-immortal bridge martial saint realm. This was already a headache for Gu Hong of the North Sea Sword Pavilion and Gong Sun Wu of Copperman Island. The founding monarch of the Grand Xian dynasty that year, King Xianwen, had presided over the Royal Reed Sea as an 8th level martial saint, conquering the lands of the Grand Xian dynasty alongside Xinlingzi and Daoisher. While King Xuanqing had been inferior to his father in the past, he was clearly no longer the same now. Yan Zhaoge was not surprised that the Grand Xian dynasty had sent powerful reinforcements into the royal Reed Sea. It was just that he was rather taken aback by the candidates. Shen Lingzi and Daoisher have not appeared. Unlike King Xianwen, who was already confirmed to be dead, Shen Lingzi and Daoisher had been missing from the royal Reed Sea for many years like King Xuanqing. Still, their fates were actually uncertain. Zhang Ming said, currently not. Golden Court Mountain knew that King Xuanqing had entered the royal Reed Sea. After entering the royal Reed Sea, this monarch had not done anything else, as he had only stabilized the situation of the Grand Xian dynasty once more before going into seclusion. Those who understood the situation would all know that his current focus was on the heaven-bearing Effecate formation. It was precisely because of this that Golden Court Mountain had allowed him to return to the royal Reed Sea. Still, as time passed, when Kong Ping and the others had emerged from the depths of the clear scenic region, the Grand Xian dynasty should be making further moves as they had sufficient manpower. Yan Zhaoge pondered for a moment before cupping his hands towards Zhang Ming and Chen Zhiliang. After meeting the southeastern exalt later, this Yan will first return to the royal Reed Sea. Take care, the two of you. Chapter 852. After meeting the southeastern exalt Chao Jie, the northeastern exalt Lu Xinggu took his leave, returning to the northeastern sky heaven territory. Yan Zhaoge and the others then met that human exalt who controlled the southeast once more. Chao Jie's first words were very straightforward. You have been to a world ruled by Buddhism. Still, you must remember not to spread it. Yan Zhaoge nodded. I understand. Gazing at Yan Zhaoge, Chao Jie suddenly said after a long time, I know about your mother. Yan Zhaoge raised his head to look at the southeastern exalt before him. Hearing him continue, I do not know what exactly the dim radiant emperor left behind. Still, if there really is something, it might not be a blessing in disguise. You should know this. Yan Zhaoge was not surprised that the other party had guessed that he had gained something from the dim radiant mausoleum. The dim darkness sect had nearly been exterminated by the star-plucking practitioner Guanlide, and the radiant light sect had been crushed by the Grand Xian dynasty, directly shattering their sun-moon peak. Even if these two sects had obtained some treasures from the dim radiant mausoleum, their gains would clearly be limited. Knowing that Yan Zhaoge had also entered the dim, radiant mausoleum before, guessing that he might have gained something great was also very normal. The dim darkness sect reported it. Yan Zhaoge pondered. The dim darkness sect only knew of the existence of the dim radiant lamp, not having seen the dim radiant wheel before. Therefore, they could not be certain whether it was Yan Zhaoge who had profited greatly from the mausoleum or whether he had gained nothing like them and the radiant light sect. Of course, the dim darkness sect, who had similarly been paying attention to the great battle of the radiant light sect in the spirit inheritance region, were also curious as to why the dim radiant lamp had not been seen. Looking calmly at Chao Jie, Yan Zhaoge nodded. Senior's words make sense. Chao Jie did not dwell on this topic as he continued. Besides the central June Heaven territory where Kunlun Mountain is, the eastern vast Heaven territory, the northwestern dim Heaven territory, and the western Turtle Heaven territory have all been searching for your mother's whereabouts. Many people have seen your mother's appearance in these places. Chao Jie said mildly, it would be very hard to link the two of you together. Still, if it is known that you are looking for her, or are related to her, it would be much easier to detect your relationship. He looked at Yan Zhaoge. In other places, there are fewer who recognize your mother, Lu Northeast, and however, this does not mean that they take care of your mother. Most of them just take a laissez-faire attitude. Hearing this, Yan Zhaoge understood Chao Jie's underlying meaning. Chao Jie actually had such a laissez-faire attitude. He didn't search for them, but he didn't take special care of them either. If others pursued Xue Chuqing, as long as their cultivation bases were not especially high, Chao Jie would generally ignore them, unless they were stirring up trouble in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Yan Zhaoge smiled. This is actually already a form of help. Thank you, Senior. Chao Jie and the others turning a blind eye to this matter was already giving Xue Chuqing a lot of convenience. At the very least, they absolutely wouldn't allow experts of the same level to casually step into their territory. This gave Xue Chuqing a lot of space to move about, and it was convenient for her to hide and move. A few people like Lu Jinggu would even secretly lend a hand. Chao Jie did not comment on Yan Zhaoge's gratitude, as he just said mildly, "Pay more attention when you are outside in the future." Yan Zhaoge thought for a moment before asking, "May I ask, Senior, other than meeting my mother and having her personally tell me everything, is there any other way for me to understand the situation?" "Yes, safely understand the situation." Chao Jie did not reveal any dissatisfaction towards Yan Zhaoge's final words that seemed like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. On the contrary, a rare hint of a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Yan Zhaoge's spirits rose. He heard Chao Jie continue, "Your cultivation base has reached my current level at the very least. It is fine for you to know some things." Hearing his words, Yan Zhaoge narrowed his eyes into slits. The exalts of 10 territories were powerful, each being the overlord of a region. This was an indisputable fact. Still, it would still be insufficient to say that they were invincible beneath the heavens, rampaging unbridled without fear. Since that was so, why had Chao Jie said that he would know some things when he reached his cultivation base? The restriction would not come from someone with a lower cultivation base than Chao Jie. In that case, why would Chao Jie, Lu Jinggu, and the others have to be apprehensive? If the other party was stronger than Chao Jie and Lu Jinggu, why would it be safe for them to know forbidden information when they reached their cultivation bases? From this, it could be seen that Chao Jie and Lu Jinggu should not be apprehensive of a certain person or some powerful force. Instead, it was some sort of rule or indescribable existence. His mother Xue Chuqing's current predicament might have stemmed from this. Still, after understanding this, Yan Zhaoge instead felt even more interested as much of his apprehension vanished. If it was some sort of rule rather than some expert or some power, the restriction on Yan Zhaoge would likely not be as great as Lu Jinggu and Chao Jie had thought. Peerless primordial beginning, unique and unparalleled. The profundities within were definitely not something that could be described in a few words. In truth, Yan Zhaoge was not too concerned about earlier heaven divination, despite knowing that Xue Chuqing was proficient in it. This was because earlier heaven divination included the peerless heavenly scripture and the origin heavenly scripture of the primordial heavenly scripture. In other words, if it had been Yan Zhaoge, who had obtained the news at the border between the eastern vast heaven territory and the northeastern sky heaven territory this time, and not those of clear light locale, Yan Zhaoge would likely have successfully found his mother this time. What was restricting Yan Zhaoge now was that it would be very difficult for him to obtain the latest and most effective clues regarding Xue Chuqing's whereabouts. After all, the world beyond worlds did not have a complete intelligence network like in the Eight Extremities world, as everything was still in progress. Still, after interacting with Chao Jie and Lu Jinggu, Yan Zhaoge realized that he or his father would still have to be cautious in seeking out Xue Chuqing. Otherwise, it was very likely that it would lead the way for those who were searching for Xue Chuqing. If the other party knew about his family's relationship, it was possible that he would come here to wait for them, or even come looking for trouble. Either way, it would clearly put Xue Chuqing in a difficult position. She had endured the pain of her own flesh and blood being separated. She couldn't let it go to waste. After taking their leave of the southeastern exalt Chao Jie, Yen Zhaoge's group immediately returned to the royal Reed Sea. With King Xuanqing's return, the situation in the Grand Xian dynasty in the royal Reed Sea instantly stabilized. He did not retaliate, just calming his heart and stabilizing his footing. The North Sea Sword Pavilion, Coppermen Island, the Dim Darkness sect, and the other powers could only cease their banners and cease their drums as well. After all, with King Xuanqing's cultivation base, he stably suppressed the local powers of the royal Reed Sea. It was just that Gu Hong, and the rest could not help but be anxious. After all, the day Kong Ping and the rest escaped from the clear scenic region's seabed was getting closer and closer. At this time, everyone could not help but focus their gazes on the virtuous spirit region. There was a rising force there that was also developing in an orderly manner. To be continued. Chapter 853. Over the past year or so, more and more people had come to know that a new power had arisen in the spirit inheritance region of the royal Reed Sea, where the Radiant Light sect had originally been. This power did not expand unbridledly in the royal Reed Sea, as they only quietly developed themselves, establishing a foundation in the royal Reed Sea. It was not like the Grand Xian dynasty of the past, which originated from outside the royal Reed Sea, a power of the world beyond worlds that had crossed the river like a ferocious dragon. This broad Creed Mountain, which had inherited the name of the East Peak of Taoism in pre-Great Calamity times, actually originated from a lower world. Their experts had arrived in the world beyond worlds before re-establishing themselves in the southeastern Yangheaven territory's royal Reed Sea, establishing their foundation. Everything had to start from the beginning, and now it was finally starting to look a little like before. Inheriting the title of one of the 5 peaks of Taoism, it was inevitable that people would feel that it did not live up to its name. After all, Kunlun Mountain was in the world beyond worlds, and was also the most core existence of the world beyond worlds. Still, within a short period of time at least, no one in the royal Reed Sea raised any objections. No one in the royal Reed Sea dared to underestimate the seemingly quiet and low-key broad Creed Mountain. The current chief of this sect was a young man named Yen Di. Indeed, in terms of his current cultivation base and longevity, Yen Di was unquestionably a young man. In fact, even using the term young man to define him would be calling him old. Yet such a young man had already broken through space and seen true divinity, attaining the 4th level of the martial saint realm, the early seeing divinity stage. The 4th level of the martial saint realm was not rare. Martial practitioners who had ascended to the world beyond worlds due to their strength, having surpassed the limits of the heavens and earth, were all at the 4th level of the martial saint realm. In the world beyond worlds, seeing divinity martial saints were mostly peak experts of a region possessing great strength. Still, they were clearly not peak existences. The top-ranked major powers of the royal Reed Sea generally all had immortal bridge martial saints or high-grade sacred artifacts guarding over them. However, it was extremely rare for such a young 4th-level martial saint like Yen Di. What shocked everyone even more was that just having ascended, Yen Di had directly slain King Xuanmu, who was a late-seeing divinity martial saint. As this news spread, the entire royal Reed Sea was instantly rendered speechless. When North Sea Sword Pavilion's Pavilion Master Gu Hong and Coppermen Island's Island Master Gongsun Wu heard this news, they were both flabbergasted. The others of the royal Reed Sea would only be even more shocked than them as they felt disbelief. But the facts were there, and no one could question them. Since he had been able to slay King Xuanmu, it basically entailed that of those currently in the royal Reed Sea, anyone below the immortal bridge realm who did not possess a high-grade sacred artifact would not be Yen Di's match. Having arrived in the world beyond worlds, besides making a trip to Golden Court Mountain to meet the southeastern exalt Chao Jia, Yen Di did not take a single step out of the spirit inheritance region. However, he had already shot to fame with a single battle earlier, becoming an expert of the royal reed sea that no one could ignore, a peak bigwig. With such a figure presiding over Broad Creed Mountain, few would underestimate them just because they hailed from a lower world. Moreover, in Broad Creed Mountain, there was still someone whose name was even more resounding than Yen Di's. Yen Zhaoga, a person who was even younger than Yen Di, so young that it was almost inconceivable. It was precisely this person who had caused the situation in the Royal Reed Sea to undergo a heaven-shaking, earth-overturning change, single-handedly stirring up the winds and clouds of the Royal Reed Sea. The current situation could be said to have been caused by Yen Zhaoga to a large extent. At the same time, this young man wielded more than a single high-grade sacred artifact, as he was powerful to the extreme. Even more so than Yen Di, this even included the legendary treasure, the Extreme Yang Seal. What many people paid attention to was the fact that apart from the Extreme Yang Seal, Broad Creed Mountain even possessed a treasure like the Extreme Yin Crown. This was a sect that overturned the understanding of many people in the Royal Reed Sea and even the southeastern Yangheaven territory. Despite clearly not having an immortal bridge marshal saint, they were already dominating a region as they could not be underestimated. Many people were actually also secretly observing how the situation would develop from here on out. King Xuanqing's return to the Royal Reed Sea caused the situation to have some suspense once more as things turned subtle. Everyone wanted to see if Broad Creed Mountain was a flash in the pan, or if it was always undefeatable. Those of Broad Creed Mountain in the world beyond worlds were not too concerned about the thoughts of the outside world, as they just advanced steadily at their own pace. They had still yet to officially open their doors and recruit disciples in the world beyond worlds. Still, when the time was ripe, that would be inevitable. The arrival of that day would also be equivalent to officially announcing that the East Peak of Taoism, Broad Creed Mountain, had re-established itself in the heavens and earth of the world beyond worlds. When Yen Zhaoga and the others returned to the Spirit Inheritance region, they saw a mountain range towering on the surface of the sea in the distance. Mountain ranges overlapped each other, forming a huge island on the sea. The island was filled with towering mountains. For the current Yen Di, destroying a lower world like the Eight Extremities world was nothing at all. The heavens and earth of the world beyond worlds were far more stable than that of the Eight Extremities world, as it was much more difficult to change the natural phenomena here. Still, moving mountains and moving seas within a certain region was a very easy thing for Yen Di. The massive island of the mountain range before them was precisely Yen Di's handiwork. Looking over, Yen Zhaoga saw that there were also 8 mountain peaks here as well. From the outside, the geographical structure was exactly the same as that of Broad Creed Mountain in the Eight Extremities world. The radiance of spirit patterns was indistinctly visible in the sky above the mountain peaks, as the clear Qi Grand Formation had already been established once more, enveloping Broad Creed Mountain. The current clear Qi Grand Formation was not something that the formation of the Eight Extremities world could compare to. After all, the Grand Formation of Broad Creed Mountain in the Eight Extremities world was already rather unsuitable in terms of power in the world beyond worlds. Before Yen Zhaoga had left, he had specially modified the formation. The large amount of treasures he had obtained from the Grand Xian Dynasty martial practitioners and the dim, radiant mausoleum had brought him a material foundation. As a result, many of Yen Zhaoga's previous plans now had the possibility of being put into practice, not being like how he had been in the Eight Extremities world back then. Still, as Yen Zhaoga saw it, the clear Qi Grand Formation before him was only for temporary use. He already had quite a few formation diagrams in his head. It was just that if he wanted to actually use them, he would still have to gather some materials in preparation. Setting up a formation out of thin air was also fine. Still, Since it was going to be his sect's guardian grand formation, it naturally had to have a stable foundation and peak strength. Upon returning, the first person Yan Zhaoge saw was his second apprentice uncle Fang Zhuan. Seeing Fang Zhuan, Yan Zhaoge instantly smiled. "Congratulations, second apprentice uncle, on transcending mortality and entering sainthood." Fang Zhuan smiled. "The environment of this world beyond worlds is really much better than that of the Eight Extremities world. Due to your efforts, the clan's current accumulation is also more abundant than before." Yan Zhaoge chuckled. "Second apprentice uncle, I have brought back some good stuff this time. With your talent and your usual accumulation, you might be able to advance a step further very soon." Fang Zhuan smiled. "First, not speaking of me, your father is currently in secluded cultivation. Even if he cannot advance a step further after emerging from seclusion this time, he will definitely have gained much." Yan Zhaoge smiled. "Do you and my father take turns in secluded cultivation, taking turns in managing the overall situation?" Fang Zhuan nodded before saying, "With the current situation being stable, Master can finally take that step after having been repressed for a long time, directly coming up to meet with us." Chapter 8:54. In the current world beyond worlds, while the location that Yan Di had chosen for Broad Creed Mountain was in the Spirit Inheritance region, it was not the former location of the Radiant Light Sect's Sun-Moon Peak. In the region of sea to the north of the Sun-Moon Peak, right above that wound of the sky, of the 8 mountain peaks, the Heaven Rising Peak was still the main peak, containing the Water Ridge, Wind Ridge, and the others. The entrance to the wound of the sky had been temporarily sealed, located right below the Water Ridge Peak. Currently, the threat from above the world beyond worlds had already been eliminated. With the Flame Devil World and the 9 underworlds both sealed, there were no external threats to the 8 Extremities world unless something unexpected happened. As for dealing with their internal problems, due to the selfless assistance of the Radiant Light Sect and the Grand Xian Dynasty, Broad Creed Mountain had accumulated a total of 5 low-grade sacred artifacts in the 8 Extremities world. Even if there were no martial saints present, just martial grandmasters alone would be sufficient to deal with the situation. Even if something unexpected happened, Yan Zhaoge, Yuan Zhangfeng, and the others who were guarding the wound of the sky would also be able to directly descend and sweep through their opponents. On the other hand, having obtained Yuan Zhongfeng's Life Creation Heavenly Scripture and the Yinyang Heavenly Scripture that Yan Zhaoge had provided, Broad Creed Mountain's legacy was indisputably superior. Many of the clan's older experts, such as Zhang Kuan and He Ning, had the possibility of advancing further. Perhaps their potential was already slowly bottoming out, fated to be unable to reach the heights of Yan Di, Yuan Zhongfeng, and Fang Zhuan. However, breaking through the bottleneck that had always been their bottleneck, surpassing the perilous obstacle that had once been as difficult as ascending to the heavens and advancing further, hope was reignited. Meanwhile, Broad Creed Mountain's senior generation experts and younger generation experts were all growing rapidly as well. With the accumulation of martial arts and resources, more and more outstanding geniuses came to join the clan, causing Broad Creed Mountain's overall advantage in the 8 Extremities world to grow greater and greater, its foundation becoming more and more robust. As time passed, barring any unexpected events that changed the heavens and the earth, this advantage would only grow even greater. Even if the peak experts all headed to the world beyond worlds, there would still be more of the younger generation coming to fill the gap. This was originally the normal path of development for a clan that had taken the position of absolute leader in a lower world. Even if they did not intentionally suppress Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City, Broad Creed Mountain's strength would still grow greater and greater like a rolling snowball. As everyone progressed, normally Broad Creed Mountain's advantage would only grow more and more obvious. A similar example was the Heavy Sun Sect of the Floating Gate realm. If not for Yuan Zhengfeng's accident, neither the Great Snow Mountain nor the towering Wave Pavilion could have shaken the heavy Sun-Sec's position in the Floating Gate realm, even if the Great Snow Mountain had by Ziming, who had ascended. After Yan Zhaoge, Yan Di, Fang Zhuan, and the others had stabilized their footing in the world beyond worlds, Yuan Zhengfeng no longer had to remain in the Eight Extremities world. The wound of the sky reopened as Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone suppressed his cultivation base and descended. 3 days later, the wound in the sky shook violently. Besides the Northern Ocean clone who had returned, there was another person who had arrived in the world beyond worlds with the momentum of ripping the sky apart. The petite figure seemed to contain boundless power. It was Yuan Zhengfeng, who had settled all the matters at hand and had nothing to worry about. Grandmaster, Master, beneath broad Creed Mountain's Water Ridge Peak in the world beyond worlds, smiles appeared on the faces of Yan Zhaoge, Fang Zhuan, Fu Enshu, and the others. Leaping onto the peak of Water Ridge Peak, Yuan Zhengfeng muttered to himself as he looked at the unique blue sky before him. This is the world beyond worlds? It is indeed extraordinary. Yan Zhaoge smiled. Grand Master, my clone mentioned to you just now that this myriad miraculous life replenishing pill has long since been prepared for you. The myriad miraculous life replenishing pill was also a divine pill that Yan Zhaoge had learned of back when he had been searching for the profound sky purple gold furnace. It possessed extremely miraculous effects in the Tao of reforging the fleshly body. Yuan Zhengfeng had still not regrown his severed arm to this day. It was not that he could not. Instead, he had gained some unique ideas after cultivating in the life creation heavenly scripture. If he wanted to put these ideas into practice, he would need some special methods which he had gradually been able to gather over the years. Yan Zhaoge, having obtained a myriad miraculous life replenishing pill this time, had increased Yuan Zhengfeng's confidence to 100%. Yuan Zhengfeng said joyfully, "It is all thanks to you." Fang Zhuan said, "Zhaoge has really had a great harvest in returning this time. Seeing those miraculous divine pills that only exist in legends, this disciple's horizons have truly been broadened." Fu Enshu nodded in deep agreement beside him. Having come to the world beyond worlds, Fu Enshu had successfully advanced further as well, stepping into the 10th level of the martial grandmaster realm. With the increase in martial legacies, the abundance of cultivation resources, and the superior environment of the world beyond worlds, the more talented one was, the greater their benefits would be. Yuan Zhengfeng smiled. Zhaoge, whether in terms of quantity or quality, even exalts would probably be hard-pressed to compare to you now, right? Yan Zhaoge chuckled. Hard to say, hard to say. Everyone pointed at him, smiling but not speaking. Now, spiritual light surged atop the converting lake peak by the side. Seeing this, Yan Zhaoge and the others exchanged glances, smiling. After glancing over, Yuan Zhengfeng too came to a realization. It's Yendi? The next moment, a figure appeared before them. He looked to be in his 30s or 40s from the outside, with handsome features and a bit of white at his temples. It was precisely Yendi. He was currently still at the 5th level of the martial saint realm, the mid-seeing divinity stage. Still, spiritual light flickered within his eyes as it felt like he might be able to ascend to a higher level at any time. Seeing Yuan Zhengfeng, Yendi immediately bowed. "I have troubled you, Master." Yuan Zhengfeng said, "It has not been long since you came up. While the time flow of the world beyond worlds is slower than that of the vast ocean world, it is faster than that of the Eight Extremities world. It has actually only been half a year or so since you started your business here." After exchanging greetings, they sealed the wound of the sky once more before returning to the heaven-rising peak and taking their seats. Yan Zhaoge also roughly recounted all that he had seen and experienced over the past few days. To think that there would also be Buddhism. Those of Broad Creed Mountain pondered as they slowly digested the news that Yen Zhaoge had brought back, after everyone else had left, and there was only Yen Di and Yen Zhaoge left. Yen Zhaoge told his father about Shui Chuqing in detail. Yen Di did not interrupt, as he just listened patiently. After silently listening to Yen Zhaoge's words, Yen Di said slowly, "That is to say that it is actually not suitable for us to blindly search for your mother, lest we might instead bring her trouble. In order to lessen her worries, we might even have to conceal our relationship with her. As much as possible." Yen Zhaoge did not raise the matter of the peerless heavenly scripture, as he instead said, "I feel that investigating in secret is still possible." Yen Di did not reply, as he appeared to be in a slight daze as he gazed into the distance. After a while, he suddenly asked, "The Southeastern Exalt said that only those who have attained his cultivation base at the very least would be able to know the truth of the matter?" Yen Zhaoge answered, "That is indeed what the Southeastern Exalt said." Yen Di nodded non-committally before changing the topic. "Do you think that Chuqing's matter is related to junior apprentice niece Sikong and the others?" Chapter 8:55. Hearing Yen Di's question, Yen Zhaoge answered solemnly, "Luckily, the Clear Light Locale disciples were looking for my mother this time. Also, that Li Cheng, who resembles junior apprentice sister Sikong, just so happened to be guarding outside the passageway, not entering the foreign dimension. Otherwise, Clear Light Locale might know that Sikong Qing, Li Cheng, and the others were related to Shui Chuqing." Yen Zhaoge said, "While I cannot be absolutely certain, I believe that my judgment is correct. The uniqueness of Sikong Qing and the others, the runes concealed within their souls, were likely all created by Shui Chuqing. On the other hand, it was most likely due to this that Shui Chuqing was being pursued now." Yen Di pondered for a moment before saying, "Tell junior apprentice niece Sikong about this as well. You can simplify the matter regarding your mother a little. The main point is for junior apprentice niece Sikong to be prepared and be more careful when outside." Yen Zhaoge nodded. "I understand." The father and son talked about many other things, mostly regarding the current situation of the world beyond worlds and Broad Creed Mountain's future development. While Yen Zhaoge did not hold any position in the sect, he had long since become a core member of its decision-making circle. Whether it was Yen Di or Yuan Zhongfeng, they were both happy to consult his opinions on the sect's overall strategy. In the end, Yen Di smiled. "You have truly gained much from your trip this time. Those miraculous pills are one of them. While they are great in number, they will eventually be used up. Being able to obtain the legendary cyclic heavenly scripture was even more difficult. This is the true cornerstone of the sect, a merit that can last for 10,000 lifetimes." Yen Zhaoge smiled. "While it is incomplete, there is a possibility of completing it. I can study it together with Grand Master at that time." Our sect's heavenly broad creed palm originated from the cyclic heavenly seal in the first place. He sighed. "Sadly, the fragment that our founder Chiu Yuan obtained was lost. The founder of Broad Creed Mountain in the Eight Extremities world, the heaven-establishing old man Chiu Yuan, had obtained a miraculous fragment that year, using it to comprehend the heavenly Broad Creed palm and establish Broad Creed Mountain's initial foundation. This fragment had become one of Broad Creed Mountain's heirlooms, as it had always been kept by its chief, passed down from generation to generation, as no one else in the sect would be able to come into contact with it. Yen Zhaoge had originally been very interested in this. He suspected that the fragment had fallen from the Flipping Sky Seal, the famous treasure of Heavenly Lord Guangqing, a bigwig of Taoism. After Yen Di had taken over as the chief of Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoge had even wanted to take a backdoor approach, obtaining the fragment from his father to research on it. who knew that Yen Di would learn from Yuan Zhengfeng that this fragment had long since been lost. According to what Yuan Zhengfeng said, the fragment had been lost long before Zhan Dongge became the sect master, and its whereabouts were unknown. Strangely, how the fragment was lost and whose hands it fell into were still unsolved mysteries. Zhan Dongge, Zhan Shilo, and Yuan Zhengfeng, who had taken over the position of sect master, had all tried their best to investigate, but to no avail. With broad Creed Mountain strength in the Eight Extremities world, even at its lowest point, it was impossible for such a precious treasure to be stolen by outsiders. Even if it was taken away by an outsider, it wouldn't disappear without a trace like this. At the very least, he knew who did it and how it was lost. Therefore, all along, Zhan Dongge, Yuan Zhengfeng, and other investigators had determined that the problem lay within. Unfortunately, there were no results in the end. Due to the uniqueness of the fragment, news of it had been strictly locked down. Still, this had been the greatest internal mystery of Broad Creed Mountain for the past century or so. Still, after learning of the existence of the world beyond worlds and witnessing treasures like the extreme Yang Seal and the extreme Yin Crown, knowing that the exalted solar luminary and the exalted lunar luminary had once been to the Eight Extremities world, Yen Zhaoge, Yen Di, Yuan Zhengfeng, and the others had begun to suspect that the problem might not necessarily lie within the sect. This was especially so as the extreme Yang Seal contained the profundities of the extreme Yang scripture, as well as the principles of the cyclic heavenly scripture, and the Yin-Yang heavenly scripture as well. Yen Zhaoge felt that the greatest suspect was that elusive exalted solar luminary, Gao Han, who had left the extreme Yang Seal in the deep abyss of the Earth domain. With this bigwig's abilities, soundlessly taking something from Broad Creed Mountain of the Eight Extremities world would be even easier than eating or drinking, let alone a dead object. Even a living person or countless living people would be taken away just like that, not causing any ripples in the slightest. Yen Di said, "Many years have already passed since this matter. It would be even more difficult to investigate it now. Still, it is a major matter for our sect. We still have to do our best." Yen Zhaoge nodded. "I understand." After taking his leave of Yen Di, Yen Zhaoge prepared to go see Si Kongqing. While he had the complete cyclic heavenly scripture, and it was not impossible for him to directly provide it to the sect, he still decided to play it safe. The version that he had provided to Yen Di, Yuan Zhengfeng, and the others was something that Yen Zhaoge had obtained after analyzing the complete cyclic heavenly scripture and integrating his own understanding. All along, when Yen Zhaoge executed the heavenly broad creed palm and secretly circulated the cyclic heavenly seal, its power had been extremely domineering. While the enemies who had faced this move had basically all perished, there had still been eyewitnesses. In the eyes of those who were unfamiliar with the heavenly broad creed palm, as time passed, doubts would inevitably arise in the eyes of those who were familiar with it. At that time, Yen Zhaoge could be said to be exceptionally talented in this martial art, actually having gradually been able to restore some of the essence of the cyclic heavenly seal's essence, contrasting it with that incomplete cyclic heavenly scripture that was gradually being restored. The former and the latter were in sync. As Yen Zhaoge walked, he saw two people standing before him, staring at each other, looking carefully. One of them was Xiao Ai, while the other was a youth with a benevolent expression and a simple gaze. This youth was not short, but the childishness on his face had yet to completely fade, as a childlike innocence could be seen within his gaze. Xiao Ai had originally been appraising this youth curiously. Sensing Yen Zhaoge's arrival, she instantly cheered, "Young master!" That youth seemed to have reacted a beat slower as he swiveled his head to look at Yen Zhaoge. After recognizing him, a smile filled his face as he was even happier than Xiao Ai's senior apprentice brother Yen. It was precisely Ing Longtu, The flow of time in the vast ocean world was faster than in the world beyond worlds. Having spent quite a bit of time there, Ing Long too had already grown up. Still, perhaps because his mental development was slower than others, or perhaps because he had already attained an extremely high cultivation base at a very young age, Ing Long tu's appearance had changed more and more. In recent years, the changes in Ing Long tu's appearance had been getting smaller and smaller, as if it was gradually coming to remain that of a youth. While his actual age was not yet 20 from his external appearance, he seemed even younger than his actual age. Ing Long tu himself did not know anything about this, not caring about it. Yan Zhaoge, Yan Di, and the others did not force him. Seeing Yan Zhaoge, after his joy, he suddenly slapped his head. Senior apprentice brother Yan, a month ago, I met someone who gave me something and asked me to pass it to you. Han Long paused for a moment before adding, that person emphasized that it definitely had to be passed to you. Yan Zhaoge was rather taken aback. Oh, what is it? Han Long handed over a jade talisman. Seeing the jade talisman, Yan Zhaoge's heart jolted slightly. He was not unfamiliar with this thing. This type of jade talisman was specifically used to store and record martial arts manuals. To be continued. Chapter 856. Looking at the jade talisman, Yan Zhaoge did not rush to open it, instead pondering for a moment before asking, Han Long, can you see through that person's cultivation base as well as his background? Ing Long tu shook his head. I can't tell. His cultivation should be much higher than mine. Yan Zhaoge nodded silently before extending his hand, placing his finger on the wrist of the youth before him. The Ing Long tu in front of him was no ordinary person. He had long since officially broken Yan Di's record as the youngest martial grandmaster in the Eight Extremities world. A 16-year-old martial grandmaster was unparalleled in the Eight Extremities world. Speaking of which, being able to become a martial scholar at this age, he was already an elite amongst elites in the Eight Extremities world, a genius amongst geniuses. While Yan Zhaoge could not be certain whether becoming a martial grandmaster at the age of 16 was the record in the world beyond worlds, even if it wasn't, those who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Han Long were probably as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. The current Han Long was not even 20 years old, but he had recently broken through to the 4th level of the martial grandmaster realm, the early essence spirit stage. He had yet to make a name for himself, but what he lacked was an opportunity and a stage. All he needed was an opportunity to soar into the sky. With the talent he had displayed, it would not be an exaggeration to say that his name would shake the entire world beyond worlds. If the person who had delivered the jade talisman had a much higher cultivation base than Han Long, then it would not be difficult for him to see that Han Long was not an ordinary person. Checking Han Long's body, Yan Zhaoge found that no one had left behind any hidden injuries or tampered with them. Since that was the case, it meant that the person who had given Han Long the jade talisman didn't have any ill intentions. Otherwise, it wasn't impossible for that person to have secretly injured Han Long. So who could it be? Looking at the jade talisman in his hand, a few possibilities instantly surfaced within Yan Zhaoge's mind. But when he opened the jade talisman and comprehended the martial arts scripture contained within, he couldn't help but be astounded once more. This is the Immortal Trapping Sword Manual. This time, Yan Zhaoge really felt that this was out of his expectations. He composed himself and studied it carefully, comparing it with the Celestial Slashing Sword Manual in his hands. A moment later, Yan Zhaoge's gaze turned deep and distant. It is not a sword Tao that the Jade Clear lineage comprehended after obtaining the Immortal Trapping Sword itself. Instead, it is one of the numinous Treasure 4 swords of the Prime Clear lineage. This meant that the person who delivered the sword manual was likely of the Prime Clear Direct lineage. The Direct lineage of the prime clear lineage was forbidden from entering the world beyond worlds. This was the decree of the earthly sovereign, which the entire world beyond worlds silently abided by. Still, this did not mean that descendants of the prime clear lineage would not be able to enter at all. Instead, it meant that they would be hard-pressed to gain a foothold in the world beyond worlds once their identities were exposed. That was why Sun Zhongda had impersonated Yen Zhaoge back then, making it easier for him to act. Only, why did the descendants of the prime clear lineage send him the immortal trapping sword manual? He already knew that Sun Zhongda was in his hands, so he wanted to redeem him. If it had been Gao Qing, who had been captured by Yen Zhaoge, there might still have been some possibility. Was this Sun fella that important? Some kind of reward or exchange? In the obscured way world, while he had slaughtered all the Buddhists, it had also made it easier for Gao Qing and the other prime clear successors to escape. However, it was far from enough for the roving Jade Heavens to repay him with a peerless technique like the immortal trapping sword manual. Techniques should not be passed down easily. This was a common principle for any lineage of inheritance. Gifting weapons, pills, treasures, lending a hand to return a favor, etc. Any of these were possible, but who would use their family's peerless martial arts to return a favor? And it wasn't even Yen Zhaoge who had asked for it, but rather them who had taken the initiative to send it over. Even a fool would know that it was impossible. Having contacted Lin Hanhua, he knows that I cultivate in the immortal ending sword. Many thoughts instantly flashed through Yen Zhaoge's mind. Perhaps the other party felt that he was different from the others of the world beyond worlds. Someone who could be roped in? The strength and potential that Yen Zhaoge currently displayed were already extraordinary. This was especially so when he was actually not alone. Yen Di was his father, and Feng Yinsheng, who wielded the extreme Yin crown and the cold sun divine saber, was his partner. These were all geniuses whose strength and potential were worthy of the praise of the world. While Yen Zhaoge had always thought highly of himself, he was really not boasting in this regard. The current him was worthy of others investing in him in advance. The immortal ending sword aside, if I also successfully cultivate in the immortal trapping sword, it would be fine if I did not expose it. However, if I did, those of the world beyond worlds would not believe me if I said that I had no connection with the prime clear lineage. Yen Zhaoge curled his lips. Could this be a consideration as well? Is he betting on my willpower? Or perhaps that exalted solar luminary, whose whereabouts were unknown, was actually hiding in the roving Jade Heavens? Was he going to make a move against him, who had obtained his old treasure, the Extreme Yang seal? Yen Zhaoge pondered, not revealing anything on the surface, as he casually asked Ing Longtu, were there any problems in the process of cultivating? Ing Longtu answered in a simple and honest manner. There were some problems in the vast ocean world. After coming to the world beyond worlds, it would be fine if I could consult Chief about them. Yes, the current Ing Longtu had already become the next broad creed mountain martial practitioner to have learnt all of the 8 extreme arts after Yuan Zhengfeng, Yen Di, and Fang Zhuan. Whether it was profound or not was another matter. Still, Ing Longtu had indeed learnt all of the 8 extreme arts now. After having learnt all of the 8 extreme arts, Ing Longtu's next choice of martial arts was not the heavenly broad creed palm, the immeasurable heavenly saber, or the limitless heavenly sword. He learnt the extreme heaven tyrannical saber that Yen Di had created. In the vast ocean world and the 8 extremities world, he had only been able to refer to the saber manuals that Yen Di had left behind. After coming to the world beyond worlds, he would be able to directly receive Yen Di's guidance. Yen Zhaoge smiled and nodded, continuing to ponder the problem of the immortal trapping sword manual even as he conversed with Ing Longtu. The information I have on hand is still too little. It is not convenient for me to make a judgment. Actually, there was still a rather small possibility. Whether it was the waves stirred up in the southeastern Yangheaven territory or his dealings with Fu Ting and the other ingenious flying peak martial practitioners, he had gradually begun to enter the sights of those peak figures of Kunlun Mountain. Did the other party intend to use this to probe him, who had suddenly sprung out of a lower world? While the possibility was very small, even the complete Immortal Trapping Sword manual of the Prime Clear Direct lineage might not only be in the hands of descendants of the Prime Clear lineage. Obtaining and preserving a martial art was not necessarily related to whether one cultivated in it or not. As he pondered, Yan Zhaoge laughed self-deprecatingly. Could it be that I am thinking too much? He shook his head. Compared to the other party's background, what he needed to decide now was what he should do next. It was indisputable that the Immortal Trapping Sword Manual was one of the peak sword arts of this world. Yan Zhaoge would definitely gladly accept a treasure that had been delivered to his doorstep. What he was considering was how he could swallow it if this was bait, while also avoiding being hooked by the other party. In other words, there was not much to choose from a strategic perspective. What he needed to consider were the technical details. To Yan Zhaoge, the significance of the Immortal Trapping Sword Manual was even more extraordinary. If he wanted to simultaneously cultivate in the three purities besides the primordial heavenly scriptures of the Jade Clear lineage, he would also need the martial arts of the Grand Clear and Prime Clear lineages. This Immortal Trapping Sword Manual before him was like someone sending him a pillow just when he was feeling sleepy. To be continued. Chapter 8:57. After getting Han Long, to describe that person's appearance, Yan Zhaoge smiled. All right, Han Long, go cultivate diligently. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me or my father. Yan Zhaoge had already given some pills suitable for Han Long's use to his father earlier. After his eldest apprentice uncle Shi Tai's death, the responsibility of teaching Han Long had generally fallen to Yan Di. Han Long nodded, saying earnestly, Yes, senior apprentice brother Yan. Gazing at his departing figure, Xiao Ai placed her hands on her waist. I really didn't think that there would be such a person. He looks stupid, yet possesses such a high cultivation base at such a young age. Yan Zhaoge smiled. You can't judge a book by its cover. Xiao Ai clicked her tongue in wonder. Yan Zhaoge glanced at her. Your talent is similarly top-notch. You should cultivate diligently as well. Don't always place your thoughts on admiring handsome men. This love-struck girl was good in all aspects, just that she liked drooling at handsome men of all kinds. Yan Zhaoge even knew that she had a little notebook in which she specially graded the males of Broad Creed Mountain. She had also graded the people they had met on this trip. For example, that young monk who had been killed by Yan Zhaoge in the obscured Wei world and ridden a white elephant had been graded by Xiao Ai as a B+. She had always just been a spectator, feasting on her eyes. Still, it was ultimately a waste of her energy. In truth, Xiao Ai was not just exceptionally talented in formations. In terms of comprehension, ability, and talent in the martial Dao alone, she was similarly outstanding to the extreme. It was just that this girl's thoughts were not actually placed on martial cultivation most of the time. Xiao Ai laughed dryly, hurriedly expressing her resolve. Young master, while you already have young mistress, this maid guarantees that you are still the most carefree in this maid's heart. There is no one else in Broad Creed Mountain other than Lord who can compare to you. She paused for a moment before saying, Mr. Fong can also compare to you. Still, it is mainly because Mr. Fong is single. Yan Zhaoge put his hand to his forehead, helplessly. Is this the main point I'm talking to you about? Xiao Ai smiled, even more obsequiously than Ahu and Pampan. To this servant, this is the most important point of all. Yan Zhaoge flicked a finger on her forehead. Be obedient and cultivate diligently, reaching the Essence Talisman Martial Grandmaster realm within a year. Otherwise, I'll confine you in seclusion, only letting female disciples send you food." Xiao Ai pouted. "Young master," Yin Zhaoge waved his hands. "It's decided then." Ignoring the aggrieved Xiao Ai, Yin Zhaoge continued heading towards Sikong Qing's residence. The current Sikong Qing had long since reached the martial grandmaster realm and could be considered as a disciple who had already left her tutelage. She herself could already accept disciples. It was just that Sikong Qing's temperament was cold, and she wholeheartedly focused on her own martial cultivation. The elders of the sect's martial inheritance hall had talked to her about taking in a disciple, but she had directly rejected them. Sikong Qing herself was still young, and it was understandable that she was currently concentrating on her own cultivation, so she did not mind being rejected as a technique imparting hall elder. As Yin Zhaoge walked, he did not remain idle. His Northern Ocean clone had also seen Ing Longtu's depiction of the person who had sent him the Jade Talisman. Currently, he was directly interrogating Sun Zhongda in the Myriad Dragon Palace. Aside from martial arts, Han Long was a little slow in everything else, and he also had a straightforward personality. Still, he was extremely focused and serious in doing things. This was also reflected in all aspects of his life. The other party's appearance had been firmly memorized down to the smallest detail. The depiction of the other party's appearance extremely vivid and lifelike. Understanding this trait of Han Long's, Yin Zhaoge believed that his depiction should not differ from the other party's actual appearance. The only problem was that if the other party was indeed a descendant of the prime clear lineage, having entered the world beyond worlds, he might have used the form-dispelling pill to disguise himself as someone else like Sun Zhongda. Still, after seeing that portrait, while Sun Zhongda's expression did not change, his gaze fluctuated slightly. The Northern Ocean clone asked, "It looks like you know him. Is he a fellow disciple?" Sun Zhongda pondered for a moment, not immediately answering. The Northern Ocean clone smiled. "No need to worry. It is not that this Yen has captured another fellow disciple of yours. Instead, he has come to me of his own accord, wanting to ransom you back." If he really was a descendant of the prime clear lineage, whatever his motives, since Yin Zhaoge had decided to leave behind the immortal trapping sword manual, there would be no need for him to continue detaining Sun Zhongda. He had already extracted all the information he could from Sun Zhongda. If he was not killed, the value of the immortal trapping sword manual would far exceed that which would be sufficient to ransom him back. Having found the location of the profound sky purple gold furnace through Sun Zhongda's clues, Yin Zhaoge no longer intended to pursue the matter of the other party's impersonation. Of course, there would definitely not be a second time. Hearing the Northern Ocean clone's words, Sun Zhongda instantly relaxed. As he nodded, "It is my senior apprentice uncle." The Northern Ocean clone said, "Very good. You can leave now." Sun Zhongda's lips twitched. He very much wanted to ask Yin Zhaoge what his sect had used to ransom him. Still, he did not ask the question in the end, as he just sighed, cupping his hands towards Yin Zhaoge. "Since that is so, this son shall take his leave." Currently, the effects of the form-dispelling pill had long since passed. Sun Zhongda no longer continued consuming it, as he no longer had Yin Zhaoge's appearance as he had regained his original appearance. He was still a handsome youth. The Northern Ocean clone brought Sun Zhongda along, leaving Broad Creed Mountain and heading into the distance before putting him down and letting him leave naturally. Yin Zhaoge was still walking amongst Broad Creed Mountain as he pondered unceasingly. It really is a direct lineage of the prime clear lineage. He shook his head slightly, arriving at Sikong Qing's lodgings. Yin Zhaoge intended to release his aura. Sensing it very quickly, Sikong Qing immediately pushed open the door and came out. "Senior apprentice brother, Yen?" Appraising Sikong Qing with a glance, Yin Zhaoge nodded to himself. Sikong Qing, had previously been cultivating in the vast ocean world. The flow of time in the vast ocean world was even faster than in the world beyond worlds. Therefore, Sikong Qing had been cultivating for quite a long time. Still, the richness of spiritual qi in the vast ocean world was completely incomparable to that of the world beyond worlds. Under such circumstances, Sikong Qing's cultivation speed had only been slightly slower than Feng Yunqing's. Still, traveling with Yan Zhaoge, Feng Yunqing had been able to use the treasures of the Myriad Dragon Palace and the dim Radiant Mausoleum, her resources being more abundant than Sikong Qing's. From this, it could be seen that Sikong Qing's talent was definitely not inferior to Feng Yunqing's. Following Yan Zhaoge, two Essence Talisman Martial Grandmasters less than 30 years of age would also be shocking achievements in the world beyond worlds. It was just that Feng Yunqing's current situation was very special as she simultaneously wielded the Cold Sun Divine Saber and the Extreme Yin Crown, causing the power she could erupt with within a short period of time to be extremely shocking, as it was sufficient to rival most seeing divinity martial saints. Strictly speaking, in a short period of time, her strength might even surpass Yuan Jingfeng's, as she was currently Broad Creed Mountain's number 3 expert. After Feng Yunqing had become a martial saint, her strength would increase greatly as well. Still, just in terms of innate talent alone, Sikong Qing was probably superior to her. And the source of this was likely Shui Chuqing. Yan Zhaoge pondered as he said, "There are some new developments that I need to inform you of, Junior Apprentice Sister Sikong." Chapter 858. My environment in the world beyond worlds is even more dangerous than in the 8 extremities world and the vast ocean world. After hearing Yan Zhaoge's words, Sikong Qing asked quietly. Yan Zhaoge nodded. Unlike the 8 extremities world, where only a single disciple of Old Man Mo's lineage discovered some clues, there are even more people here who have discovered the uniqueness of you, Yu Baoqi, and Li Chang. After a slight pause, Yan Zhaoge continued, "Other than that, I am gradually beginning to understand the reason behind the secrets of you, Yu Baoqi and Li Chang. It is just that I cannot be certain. Therefore, we can talk about this later. Junior Apprentice Sister Sikong, you can still leave the mountain, but you have to be especially careful." Hearing this, Sikong Qing's expression did not change, as it was as cold as before as she just nodded. "Rest easy, Senior Apprentice Brother Yan. I understand." Yan Zhaoge said, "Right, you are a man of your word, also knowing how to act appropriately. I can naturally trust your words." He thought for a moment before suddenly smiling. "I heard that you and the North Sea Sword Pavilion's Yu Baoqi get along well?" Sikong Qing said, "Yes, she is like senior sister Li Jingwan of the 8 extremities world's Jade Sea City, getting along well with me. It is just that." Now Sikong Qing knit her brows, appearing rather vexed. Thinking for a moment, Yan Zhaoge already understood what she was feeling. The person who got along well with him just had a face that was exactly the same as his own. However, the two were not related by blood at all. If they really were not related at all, it would instead be a kind of fate, getting along well with each other. While the heavens and the earth were vast, and there were all sorts of marvels, how many people were truly completely similar, resembling 2 identical leaves? Actually encountering such a vast world in her lifetime was truly rare. The problem, however, was that Sikong Qing, who was already a martial grandmaster, had been able to immediately see that rune within the body of the other party's soul. This meant that they were not completely unrelated to each other. This inevitably caused Sikong Qing to be concerned. Having long since predicted this, Yan Zhaoge had secretly made arrangements for Sikong Qing, such that Yu Baoqi was unable to detect the rune within the body of Sikong Qing's soul. The North Sea Sword Pavilion and Yu Baoqi, who were still unaware of this, would naturally not be able to connect it too much. On the contrary, having been on good terms with Broad Creed Mountain in the first place, they viewed Qing in a different light. To Yu Baoqi, she treated Qing like a younger sister. Qing's temperament was just a bit colder, but she wasn't a cold-blooded person, nor was she good at pretending. When she was with Yu Baoqi, she felt very congenial, but she also felt a lot of psychological pressure. Yan Zhaoge said, "Let's wait for a few more days. After I have ascertained the exact situation between you, Yu Baoqi, Li Cheng, and the others, everything will be fine. You can consider whether you want to have an open and honest talk with them. However, I have to say this in advance. Knowing the truth might not be a good thing for her or the North Sea Sword Pavilion." Qing nodded silently. She was a strong-willed person, so she quickly adjusted her mentality and stopped talking about this topic. She didn't want to let this matter affect her mood. Qing then asked, "Senior apprentice brother Yan, I heard Master say that on this trip you encountered quite a few experts of the younger generation, of other families." Yan Zhaoge said, "That's right. Gao Qing of the prime clear lineage's Green Duckweed Mountain, and Fu Ting of the Central June Heaven Territory's Kunlun Mountain's ingenious flying peak of our world beyond worlds are both rather outstanding figures." A look of yearning appeared on Qing's face. The world beyond worlds is indeed a completely different place from the Eight Extremities world. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. Whether it was Fu Ting or Gao Qing, perhaps they were still very young at heart, like young girls. But their years of cultivation were all much longer than Qing's. Qing, who had already begun cultivating in the life creation heavenly scripture, and the Hearts Will Thunder incantation was already sufficiently outstanding in the world beyond worlds. Fu Ting and Gao Qing were able to suppress Qing because their starting point was higher, and they had walked on a smoother and more prosperous path for many years. As for Feng Yinsheng, Qing, Yinglong Tu, Su Fei, and Shi Jun, they had only just begun to walk this path. With regards to Qing, Yan Zhaoge was still very assured. There was no need for superfluous words, just pointing out the situation clearly. After taking his leave of Qing, Yan Zhaoge returned to his lodgings. Within a secluded room, Yan Zhaoge sat in the meditative position, his eyes slightly closed as he entered a meditative state. After a short while, Yan Zhaoge extended a palm, pushing it forward. The two qis of yin and yang, black and white, began intermingling and congregating in front of Yan Zhaoge's palm. After a moment, Yan Zhaoge extended his other hand as well, his hands forming a circle before his chest. His hands circulated, embracing yin and yang, encompassing the heavens and the earth. The two qis of black and white intermingled, transforming into two fish of yin and yang that were connected head to tail as they rotated between Yan Zhaoge's palms. As they rotated, the spiritual qi amid space was completely extinguished, collapsing and congregating towards the point where the fish of yin and yang intersected. Still, this process did not affect the surrounding area, as it was instead firmly confined within Yan Zhaoge's embrace. A Taiji diagram gradually appeared, rotating unceasingly. Yan Zhaoge's expression was calm, his gaze focused. King Xuanqing's return to the Royal Reed Sea had already caused the heavens and earth of the Royal Reed Sea to surge once more. Currently, it was still just the undercurrents surging as everyone was still holding back. King Xuanqing was at the 8th level of the Martial Saint realm, guarding over the capital of the Grand Xian dynasty that had been established for 100 years as he possessed the home advantage. If he brought back another high-grade sacred artifact this time, even Lin Hanhua might not be able to take him down in the Grand Xian dynasty's capital. If Broad Creed Mountain, the North Sea Sword Pavilion, Copperman Island, and the other powers wanted to take the initiative to join forces and attack the capital of the Grand Xian dynasty, it would definitely not be an easy thing to do now. On the other hand, King Xuanqing was wary of the southeastern exalt's attitude on one hand and also had to make arrangements for the heaven-bearing effecate formation on the other. After all, that was the major matter that their 3 generations had been planning for all these years. However, when the 3 immortal bridge martial saints Kangping, Dongcheng, and Gu Zhang emerged from the depths of the clear scenic region with the high-grade sacred artifact, the cloud-circulating heavenly light sword, the Grand Xian dynasty would definitely launch a counterattack. At that time, the undercurrent would surge and turn into a storm. What Yan Zhaoge was most concerned about was that with King Xuanqing having returned, could it be possible that Shen Lingzi and Dao Shi, who had only left the Royal Reed Sea that year, their fates unknown, might have suddenly returned to the Royal Reed Sea at some point in time as well? If that was the case, the storm and the waves would undoubtedly become a tsunami that reached the heavens. Therefore, whether it was taking the initiative to attack first or defending and counterattacking, it was necessary to work hard to improve oneself. His father and his fellow disciples were all diligently cultivating. Yan Zhaoge was no exception. He already had a plan for the path that he wanted to walk. With the immortal trapping sword manual in hand, he had made even more ample preparations, as well as being able to look forward to even more things. He could look forward to achieving a perfect result. Now, he wanted to attempt to overcome the final obstacle. To be continued. Chapter 859. Because Yan Zhaoge had the peerless heavenly scripture as his foundation, he was more or less inclined towards the lineage of the primordial Heavenly Lord's Jade clear lineage. At least, that was the case for now. Fortunately, the 3 pure ones were a single entity, and they were able to communicate with each other. There were traces of their Tao arts in the first place. However, the Lord of Tao and Virtue's grand clear lineage and the Lord of Numinous Treasure's prime clear lineage were still necessary. This was especially so when Yan Zhaoge had already reached the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm, already standing at the peak of the merging Avatar Martial Saint realm. What he needed to do next was to break through a major bottleneck and break through space to see true divinity, achieving the seeing divinity Martial Saint realm. If Yan Zhaoge wanted to pursue perfection, it would be best if the martial arts of the 3 clear lineages each had a supreme, direct lineage martial art for Yan Zhaoge to study. In the Jade clear lineage, besides the peerless heavenly scripture, Yan Zhaoge also cultivated in the cyclic heavenly scripture and the yin-yang heavenly scripture. Recently, he had even begun to delve into the life creation heavenly tome. Apart from that, he also had the complete omniscient heavenly tome of all phenomena and a fragment of the Aeon Light heavenly tome. Whatever the reason, the prime clear lineage had just delivered the immortal trapping sword manual to him at the very least, instantly satisfying Yan Zhaoge's needs. Therefore, for the current Yan Zhaoge, there was still one final hurdle that he had to overcome. That was the supreme martial arts of the Grand Clear lineage. The Grand Clear lineage was different from the Jade Clear and Prime Clear lineages. While there was a Daedejing, which recorded the supreme martial arts of the Grand Clear direct lineage, such as the Grand Cosmos 5 Grands, 90% of the supreme martial arts of Taoism currently circulating beneath the heavens actually originated from the Daedejing. Therefore, when Yan Zhaoge had transcended mortality and entered sainthood, he had relied on various martial arts to reverse engineer the Lord of Tao and Virtue's great virtue and merit in spreading the Tao. Thus, he had simultaneously cultivated in the 3 purities and achieved sainthood. In theory, he could use the same method now. He just needed to fuse more martial arts together to push it forward. This was not a difficult thing for Yan Zhaoge, who possessed the martial repository of the heavenly quartz divine palace in pre-great calamity times. However, such a method was not perfect enough. His foundation was unstable, as it would cause Yan Zhaoge's future path to become more and more difficult. Throughout the ages, Yan Zhaoge wasn't the only one who had the thought of cultivating in the three purities and possessing boundless prowess. There was no lack of geniuses among them, but almost no one could walk this path in the end. The difficulty was already so high in the first place. If his foundation was even more unstable, his path would become narrower and narrower. Yan Zhaoge could virtually already foresee his tragic end. He had crossed the first stage when he transcended mortality and entered sainthood, so it was not a big deal for him to use such a trick. But now that he was trying to break through to the second stage, he had to avoid using this method as much as possible. While Yan Zhaoge was hard to come by, it was not like he was completely helpless against it. He had two alternatives that he could try. Yan Zhaoge's first plan was to target the southeastern Exalt Chao Jia. Golden Court Mountains lineage originated from the heaven-reigning Purple Tenuity North Pole Grand Sovereign Emperor, and the heavenly cycle righteousness of this lineage was born from the grand, clear lineage of the Book of Taoism. He was currently on pretty good terms with Golden Court Mountain. If he went to seek guidance from them, the southeastern Exalt would most likely not directly reject him. Of course, it was just a simple instruction. If Yan Zhaoge wanted the other party to bestow him with their true legacy, it would still be impossible if he did not enter Golden Court Mountain. However, Yan Zhaoge had his own methods. Besides being renowned in the Tao of the Sword in the world beyond worlds, the southeastern Exalt Chao Jia was similarly top-notch in the Tao of alchemy. The eastern Exalt of the southern extremity longevity emperor's legacy, who cultivated in the longevity martial scripture, was renowned beneath the heavens for his alchemy. Yet, even he dared not say that he would definitely surpass the sword cultivator Chao Jia in the Tao of alchemy. Chao Jia's passion for alchemy was something that the entire world knew of. Yan Zhaoge was certain that some of the pill formulas that had been preserved in the martial repository of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace in the past would attract Chao Jia's interest. Many of these pill formulas had already been lost. Any one of them could be used as a bargaining chip for Yan Zhaoge. The second plan was for Yan Zhaoge to target the lineage of the Brocade Emperor at Kunlun Mountain's ingenious Flying Peaks Red Lotus Cliff. Strictly speaking, as compared to Chao Jia, who originated from the legacy of the Purple Tenuity Emperor, the Brocade Emperor was of the more orthodox, direct lineage of the grand, clear lineage. While he had previously been vying for the profound sky purple gold furnace with Fu Ting and the others, the atmosphere had still been rather harmonious. That was then, and this was now. As long as the other party did not know that the profound sky purple gold furnace had actually ended up in Yan Zhaoge's hands in the end, many things could still be discussed. It was clearly impossible for him to obtain a supreme martial art of the grand, clear lineage from Fu Ting. Yan Zhaoge would have to bring out a bargaining chip to exchange for it. This bargaining chip could be the pill formula of some divine pill or some supreme martial art that Yan Zhaoge grasped. While the grand, clear, direct lineage that the Brocade Emperor's lineage cultivated in was already the peak legacies of Taoism, it was not like they did not desire supreme martial arts of the same level. Yan Zhaoge could attempt either of these two paths. Still, he was not completely confident of succeeding. Also, there were some hidden concerns as well, especially with the second option. At the same time, whatever it was, Yan Zhaoge would have to pay a price for it. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. This was also a very normal thing. Still, as someone who was born in the year of the Pishio and was insatiably greedy, only seeking to get in and not give out, Yan Zhaoge would naturally prefer to gain something without risking anything. Or it should be said that if he did it himself, he would be well fed. Therefore, Yan Zhaoge was currently working hard in this regard. He embraced yin and yang with his hands, his aura circulating as it gradually transformed into the phenomenon of taiji. Yen Zhaoga's mind unceasingly surfaced the Taiji Yin-Yang palm executed by Fu Ting when he had clashed with her back then. At that time, Yen Zhaoga had relied on the profundities of the simultaneous cultivation of the three purities and his foundation of the peerless heavenly scripture and the Yin-Yang heavenly scripture to successfully imitate the Taiji Yin-Yang palm, causing Fu Ting, who had wanted to probe him, to fail miserably. While Fu Ting and the other ingenious flying peak experts had been deceived, Yen Zhaoga himself was well aware that that had not been the true Taiji Yin-Yang palm. However, this experience had given Yen Zhaoga an opportunity. It was an opportunity for him to try to derive the Taiji Yin-Yang palm, a peerless martial art. Logically speaking, such a thing was actually very inconceivable even if Yen Zhaoga cultivated in the three purities simultaneously. The Taiji Yin-Yang palm was the most orthodox supreme martial art of the grand, clear lineage recorded in the Book of Tao and Virtue after all. How could it be so easily researched and created by others? Yen Zhaoga possessed the peerless heavenly scripture and a fragmented version of the Aeon Light heavenly scripture. It would be very difficult for him to derive the complete Aeon Light heavenly scripture. However, in his recent cultivation process, Yen Zhaoga had gradually discovered some unique aspects of himself. He possessed an exceptionally acute sense of touch towards supreme martial arts of the grand clear lineage. Whether it was in the eight extremities world or the world beyond worlds before this, he had never directly clashed with direct lineages of the grand clear lineage before. Therefore, he had not discovered it. Still, after clashing with Fu Ting, Yen Zhaoga had gradually come to realize that something was wrong. He had yet to understand exactly what was going on. While he felt doubtful, for the time being, this sort of unique talent was undoubtedly extremely beneficial to him. Of course, even so, analyzing the Taiji Yin-Yang palm was still an extremely difficult process. Even if he succeeded, it would not be the true direct lineage Taiji Yin-Yang palm that was exactly like Fu Ting's. Instead, the Taiji Yin-Yang palm that belonged to Yen Zhaoga would appear much weaker as compared to the true Grand Cosmos 5 manifestations. Still, it was already sufficient for the current Yen Zhaoga to attempt a breakthrough. Yen Zhaoga's expression was calm as he gradually pushed forward with his hands. The Taiji diagram between his palms rotated slower and slower as the power within grew stronger and stronger. To be continued. Chapter 860. Within Yen Zhaoga's body, he secretly circulated the peerless heavenly scripture, a region of chaos, infinite infinity, manifesting nothingness as emptiness. On this basis, Yen Zhaoga felt like he had comprehended some of the profundities of the head of the Grand Cosmos 5 manifestations, grand simplicity. Only, regardless of whether it was the peerless heavenly scripture or the Tai technique, they were both too profound, indescribable, impossible to surmise. It was as if he had already deviated from the correct path just by thinking about it in his mind. Apart from making mistakes, it was difficult to understand the true meaning behind it. Still, Yen Zhaoga was not in a hurry. He was pondering on the art of grand simplicity in order to lay the groundwork for his future study of Taiji of the Grand Cosmos 5 manifestations. Taking a strategic view from a strategically advantageous position would yield twice the results with half the effort. The Taiji diagram spun slower and slower until it gradually stopped. When the yin-yang fishes stopped spinning, the originally peaceful space around them suddenly began to tremble at this moment. It was as if the tiny heavens and earth within this secluded room were about to be stripped away from the world beyond worlds. In the next moment, the Taiji diagram began to spin again. The surrounding objects, whether they were tangible or intangible, visible or not, began to show signs of collapsing. Everything returned to their origins, turning into primordial and pure yin and yang qi, entering the Taiji diagram. The power of the Taiji symbol grew stronger. Yen Zhaoge looked quietly at everything before him, his expression neither sad nor joyless. He had gradually grasped some of the tricks and understood how to transform the profound scriptures of the Yin-Yang heavenly scripture into the Taiji Yin-Yang palm. There was still a long way to go. It was just that Yen Zhaoge had undoubtedly already made a good start. The hardest part about deriving and studying martial arts was actually the beginning. Comprehending the Tao was difficult at the beginning. Only after reaching the initial threshold could one talk about walking down this path. In a sense, this was worthy of the name. A good start was half the battle. Having passed this hurdle, while Yen Zhaoge was filled with infinite joy, he was similarly even more perplexed. At this point, Yen Zhaoge could already confirm that on the path of the martial Tao, to put it bluntly, his talent and comprehension abilities were extraordinary. To be able to reach this stage, in addition to various external environments, one's own conditions were also extremely outstanding. While he liked to boast, liked to show off, liked to show off, liked to show off in front of others, fairly speaking, Yen Zhaoge was indeed someone who was born for this. It was just that before this, no matter what martial art Yen Zhaoge cultivated in, he had never been particularly biased towards it. When learning different martial arts of the same level, Yen Zhaoge's rate of progress would vary. That was mostly due to his own interest and whether or not he had invested more effort into it. In this world, there were some people who practiced certain martial arts and were especially compatible with it, so they improved rapidly. However, this did not apply to Yen Zhaoge. It could be said that Yen Zhaoge had a universal love towards the various martial arts, viewing them all equally, whether it was cultivating in the primordial, heavenly scripture of the jade clear lineage, or cultivating in the immortal, exterminating four swords of the prime clear lineage. As Yen Zhaoge saw it, there was not much of a difference. Yet, in analyzing the supreme martial arts of the grand clear lineage, Yen Zhaoge felt exceptionally smooth, exceptionally adept at it. Are you kidding me? I started cultivating from the peerless heavenly scripture until now. I've completed 3 volumes of the primordial heavenly scripture and completed 1 sword of the immortal exterminating 4 swords. I've been cultivating like this for so many years. Now you're telling me that I'm actually most suited to cultivate the grand, clear lineages, martial arts? Yen Zhaoge did not know whether to laugh or to cry, yet there just had to be 4 primordial heavenly scriptures and the immortal ending sword manual in the martial repository of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace that year. Yet there were no supreme martial arts of the grand, clear, direct lineage at all. If it was a coincidence, this was really too much of a coincidence. Yen Zhaoge was not someone who believed in coincidences, especially when these coincidences seemed rather bizarre. Still, with no clues to speak of at this moment, he could only place this matter aside for now, burying his doubts deep within his heart. It was still the current matter that required Yen Zhaoge to spend more effort to resolve. Slowly ceasing his cultivation and dispersing the Taiji diagram and the twin chis of yin and yang, Yen Zhaoge stood up and walked out of the secluded room. Deriving the Taiji yin-yang palm is not something that can be done in a single day. Even I would need a very long time to analyze it. Yen Zhaoge pondered. Time waits for no man. Yen Zhaoge pondered. Time waits for no man. If I am not wrong in my calculations, Kong Ping and the others will at most still need around 3 to 5 years of time to emerge from the depths of the clear scenic region. As he pondered, he went to see his father, Yen Di. His father was not busy cultivating at this time, as he was instead handling the internal affairs of the clan, making some arrangements. Broad Creed Mountain had already established its headquarters in the world beyond worlds in the Spirit Inheritance region. Besides Yen Di and Yuan Zhengfeng, who had ascended, a small number of disciples such as Fang Zhuan, Fu Enshu, Ing Longtu, and Sikong Qing had also arrived in the world beyond worlds through the heavenly connection jade that Yen Zhaoge had provided. While they were still rather lacking in manpower, the initial framework of the clan had already been established, being able to maintain its daily operations. It was just that the matter of opening its headquarters and accepting disciples had been temporarily set aside. King Xuanqing's return to the royal Reed Sea had caused the hearts of the people here to become uneasy once more. Whether or not Broad Creed Mountain could completely gain a stable foothold in the world beyond worlds would depend on a battle with their enemies. If they won this battle, let alone Broad Creed Mountain completely gaining a stable foothold, it would even be able to raise its prestige in the royal Reed Sea and even in the entire southeastern Yangheaven territory. It might even be possible for them to replace the Grand Xian dynasty as the new hegemon of the royal Reed Sea, occupying a leading position. Opening their headquarters at that time might be the best time. Before that, however, what Broad Creed Mountain needed to do was to unceasingly accumulate and raise its strength in order to face the upcoming challenges and rise. After seeing Yen Di, Yen Zhaoge said in a heavy tone, "Father, I am preparing to go to the vast ocean world in the next few years." Yen Di understood his intentions just from hearing this. You simply need time? For human martial practitioners, the cultivation environment of the vast ocean world was definitely better than that of the flame devil world and the floating life world, being about the same as that of the eight extremities world. Still, it was far inferior as compared to the world beyond worlds in terms of abundance of spiritual qi. There was only one reason why Yen Zhaoge wanted to go to the vast ocean world. The flow of time. There was even faster than in the world beyond worlds. A year in the world beyond worlds would be equivalent to over 2 years in the vast ocean world. Yen Zhaoge's accumulated resources were sufficiently abundant. It would actually not be difficult for him to advance further now. If he did not pursue the path of simultaneously cultivating in the three purities, Yen Zhaoge would very quickly be able to break through into the seeing divinity martial saint realm. The current factor restricting him on his current path was not the environment or resources, but his comprehension of martial principles. Deriving and analyzing the Taiji Yin Yang Palm required time. Due to this, the vast ocean world was actually more suitable for him to cultivate in than the world beyond worlds. Yen Zhaoge nodded, directly saying truthfully, "I have clashed with the daughter of the Brocade Emperor, Fu Ting. I want to try deriving and analyzing her Taiji Yin Yang Palm with our Yin Yang heavenly scripture." Knowing the martial path that Yen Zhaoge walked, Yen Di did not object to it. Hearing Yen Zhaoge's words now, he pondered slightly. "Are you alone?" Chapter 8, 61. You can only rely on yourself to derive and comprehend the Taiji Yin Yang Palm. The rest of us can't help you. Yen Di said, "After all, you are the only one who simultaneously cultivates in the three clear lineages, and only you have come into contact with the true Taiji Yin Yang Palm of the grand, clear, direct lineage. The difficulty involved can be imagined. Having made this trip to the vast ocean world, you will most likely have to enter death's seclusion to comprehend it." A rare look of worry appeared in Yen Di's gaze. "If you go down alone, with no one to protect you, I will not be able to rest easy." Those who were in death's seclusion usually needed someone to protect them to prevent external enemies from taking advantage of them. If they were in their own sect, it would be fine under the protection of the sect. When Yen Zhaoge went to the vast ocean world, the people of Broad Creed Mountain, there were actually all guests at Chongli Mountain, not being a stronghold of their own. Meanwhile, a problem that all of Broad Creed Mountain had to pay attention to was that in the vast ocean world, there was a wound of the sky that led to the royal Reed Sea. The wound of the sky was in the Phoenix-bearing province, and it was quite a distance away from the Spirit Inheritance province. While the Phoenix-bearing region was currently controlled by the Dim Darkness sect, experts like King Xuanqing would definitely be able to go there, as, and when they wished. A long time ago, people of the Grand Xian dynasty had headed to the Phoenix-bearing region, where Yen Zhaoge had first appeared in the world beyond worlds in an attempt to investigate his background. It was Madame Kong and her two sons. In the end, they just happened to run into Yen Zhaoge, as well as Luo Ziyuan, and the others of the Radiant Light sect who had just returned from extra-dimensional space. In a chaotic battle between the three sides, Madame Kong had perished. This had directly led to the great battle in which the Grand Xian dynasty had breached the headquarters of the Radiant Light sect afterwards. It was just that after this battle, Kong Ping and the others had been trapped in the clear scenic region. While King Xuanmu had perished, the Grand Xian dynasty had suffered a great blow to its vitality. The Grand Xian dynasty did not have the time nor the energy to continue investigating the wound of the sky in the Phoenix-bearing region and the vast ocean world. The Phoenix-bearing province had enjoyed peace until now. However, the situation was different now. With King Xuanqing's return, the Grand Xian dynasty had gradually stabilized their footing once more. For the sake of the heaven-bearing Effecate array, they were keeping a low profile and did not act rashly. However, no one knew how long the current situation would last. The vast ocean world was not a completely stable place. Over the past year or so, Broad Creed Mountain had actually been paying close attention to the happenings in the Phoenix-bearing region. After all, there were still people of Broad Creed Mountain in the vast ocean world. Yen Zhaoge nodded, saying, "You are right, I indeed intend to go down alone. Firstly, no one can leave this place. Secondly, secrecy is often the most effective form of protection." Yen Zhaoge explained, "In going to the vast ocean world this time, I did not know that I would meet Elder Zhang and the others of the vast ocean world, nor did I inform those of Changli Mountain. Secrecy is the best form of protection for me, while I will be entering secluded cultivation this time, and may even be in death seclusion. It is not certain that I will not return at all. If there is time in between, I will find some time to return to the world beyond worlds and show myself to others." Yen Di understood what Yen Zhaoge meant. Even if his enemies attacked him, Yen Zhaoge had never shown himself. It was fine, even if they knew that he was in secluded cultivation. He just had to mislead his opponents into thinking that Yen Zhaoge was in secluded cultivation in the world beyond worlds instead of having gone to the vast ocean world. Yen Di's furrowed brows still did not relax. Yen Zhaoge smiled as he consoled him. "Relax, father. I have my ways." Hearing his words, Yen Di was silent as he looked quietly at Yen Zhaoge. The current Yen Zhaoge, be it in terms of his cultivation base or his conduct, had already long since ceased to require his worry. Yen Di himself was also never one to drag things out. Still, he was a father at the end of the day. As a father, no matter when, how could he not worry about his son when he knew that there was a risk? Still, after a short period of consideration, Yen Di did not say anything more in the end. After reporting the situation to Feng Yinsheng, Yuan Zhengfeng, Fang Zhuan, and a few others, Yen Zhaoge took his leave. Besides these few people, even within Broad Creed Mountain, there was no one else who knew where Yen Zhaoge was actually headed, whether he was out adventuring or in secluded cultivation at converting Lake Peak in the back mountains of Broad Creed Mountain in the Royal Reed Sea, these various reasons all being cover-ups. Yen Zhaoge first headed to the Eight Extremities world via the wound of the sky beneath Water Ridge Peak before heading to the vast ocean world via the Eight Extremities world. After arriving in the vast ocean world, his final destination was still the bewildering Maze Sea. Yen Zhaoge's current destination was precisely here. He had no intention of leaving the bewildering Maze Sea at all, also not intending to interact with anyone. This place was precisely a good place to hide. While there were many martial practitioners in the vast ocean world, it would still be very difficult to find a single person here. No one knew that the traceless cloud dragon King Yen Zhaoge, who had single-handedly overturned the heavens and earth of the entire world when he had been a martial grandmaster, had returned to the vast ocean world once more. Yan Zhaoge retracted his true essence and aura, circulating the peerless heavenly scripture, as all things turned into nothingness. Indeed, while I have yet to attain the seeing divinity stage, having returned to the lower worlds now, I am already unable to remain here. The current Yan Zhaoge had to suppress and retract his power like those experts above the third level of the martial saint realm in order to be able to survive in a lower world like the vast ocean world. Otherwise, he would be rejected by the power of dimensions. Fortunately, unlike Yan Di, who could only advance and not retreat, Yan Zhaoge was able to suppress and retract his power very freely. It could be said that it was also very easy for him who cultivated in the peerless heavenly scripture to completely suppress himself to that of an ordinary person who had never cultivated in martial arts before. Looking at the great sea before him, Yan Zhaoge inhaled deeply. Then let us begin. He sat in the meditative position amid space, his figure descending towards the great sea down below. Not a single ripple was caused, as he had already sunk directly into the depths of the sea, vanishing without a trace. In order to pursue efficiency and concentrate his energy, just as Yan Di had predicted, Yan Zhaoge entered death's seclusion. His first seclusion directly lasted for 3 years. After emerging from seclusion in the vast ocean world 3 years later, Yan Zhaoge secretly returned to the world beyond worlds, showing his face once more. At this time, only a little over a year had passed in the world beyond worlds. While Yan Zhaoge seemed to be living in seclusion and not as active as before, this did not arouse the suspicions of others. Instead, while he had been in seclusion, a special person had come to visit him. This was within his expectations, whilst also unexpected. The central June Heaven territory, Kunlun Mountain's ingenious flying peak, a descendant of the Brocade Emperor's lineage. The other party did not appear arrogant or rude, as he was simply being polite in his words. Still, Yan Di and the others could tell that this person had come to probe whether the profound sky-purple gold furnace had fallen into Yan Zhaoge's hands that year. As Yan Zhaoge was in seclusion, and Yan Di and the others had dealt with him flawlessly, the other party did not take things too far, as he quickly left. As for whether his suspicions had been dispelled, only the person himself would know. After appearing for a short while, Yan Zhaoge headed to the vast ocean world, once more beginning a second period of secluded cultivation. Meanwhile, in the world beyond worlds, everything seemed to still be calm, as a storm was still brewing in the shadows, silently awaiting the passing of time. Calculating in terms of world beyond worlds time, a year after Yan Zhaoge had entered seclusion, once more, changes seemed to have begun. Just like how Yan Zhaoge had once caused heaven-shaking, earth-overturning changes in the vast ocean world, someone who had once commanded the winds and summoned the rain in the royal reed, sea returned here once more. To be continued.